Chapter 838. So many people? Yanwei was shocked. Qin Feiyang sent a sound transmission. How are their cultivations? Yanwei observed carefully for a moment and said in a deep voice, Don't scare me, they are all war emperors. Qin Feiyang turned pale with fright. 15 battle emperors, this was too terrifying. Swoosh. Qin Feiyang's gaze went past the 15 people and looked even deeper. To actually attract so many war emperors, what exactly was inside? Whoosh! Suddenly, a figure flew out from the depths and landed in front of the 15 people. This person had a head of white hair and was also wearing a black mask. However, from his wrinkled hands, it was not hard to tell that he was an old man. Greetings, Elder Wu. The 15 people bowed respectfully, and Elder Wu nodded and asked, Who was it that barged into this place? It's a pair of master and disciple. The masked man who had stopped Qin Feiyang earlier stood out and said, What's their name? How's their cultivation? Elder Wu asked. Master is Wei Yan, an 8-star battle saint. Disciple is Lin Fan, an 8-star battle sect. They are both rogue cultivators. The masked man said. Elder Wu said, Then why did they enter the Flame Mountain range? The masked man said, That Wei Yan said that they want to go to the 9th area. I have already told them to take a detour. Well done. At this time, we must not let anyone barge in and ruin young master's good deed. If you meet such people again, don't try to persuade them. Just kill them. Elder Wu instructed, filled with a murderous aura. Understood. The 15 people bowed and replied. Elder Wu added, In addition, pay attention to the sea of fire below. Don't let anyone sneak in. Yes. The 15 people nodded. Swoosh. Elder Wu immediately turned around and quickly disappeared into the depths. Sea of fire. After watching Elder Wu leave, the 15 people lowered their heads and scanned the sea of fire below. As for Qin Feiyang and Elder Wu, they had already sunk to the bottom of the sea of fire when Elder Wu had instructed the 15 people to pay attention to the sea of fire below. Therefore, the 15 people did not discover them. However, just as the two of them were about to continue forward, a sudden change occurred. Streaks of dazzling battle chi descended from the sky and entered the sea of fire, forming a barrier not far in front of them. The barrier went from the ground to the clouds, like a natural moat. Looking at the barrier, Qin Feiyang's face sank. This was obviously the doing of those 15 people. This was equivalent to cutting off the path ahead. This was because as soon as they touched the barrier, the 15 people would immediately sense it. What should we do? Yanwei asked. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said in a low voice, Let's go back first. Whoosh. Yanwei immediately turned around and led Qin Feiyang back the way they came. Very soon, they stayed away from the 15 people. The two of them flew out of the sea of fire one after another. They stood in the void and looked ahead. Yanwei said, It seems like it's just as you guessed. A rare treasure has appeared in the depths. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, Even if there is a rare treasure, so what? We will only have a chance if we can sneak in. Yanwei pondered for a while and said, Why don't we try another direction? I don't think it will work. Because from their cautious attitude, it's not difficult to infer that there should be people guarding the other directions. Qin Feiyang said. Yanwei said, This is just your guess. We will only know if there is one or not. Okay, let's go and have a look. Qin Feiyang nodded. It could be seen that Yanwei did not want to give up just like that. Frankly speaking, he did not want to give up either, because that inexplicable sense of intimacy had been pervading his heart and had not dissipated. Therefore, he hoped to find a chance in the other directions. However, things did not go as he wished. After 4 hours of circling around, the two of them still couldn't find an opportunity, because as Qin Feiyang expected, there were guards in all directions. Moreover, according to Qin Feiyang's calculations, there were more than 100 people in all directions. They were all wearing masks and were extremely mysterious. What was even more ridiculous was that these people were all War King. They surrounded the central area, and their battle chi had turned into a barrier, sealing off all the places. It could be said that it was airtight. At this moment, Qin Feiyang stood in the air above a scarlet-red mountain peak, their faces full of worry. From the looks of the current situation, it was already certain that a rare treasure had appeared inside. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't have used such a powerful lineup and had such a tight defense. But it was also because of this that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for them to sneak in. Yin Wei frowned. Who do you think they are? When he first saw the 15 people, he thought that they were all in formation. But he didn't expect that there was actually a young master. In other words, these 100 war king-s were all followers of this person. To use so many war king-s at once, this young master's identity was definitely not simple. Qin Feiyang asked. Could it be someone from the 9th region? Impossible. Although I've never been to the 9th region, I can imagine that no tribe can have so many war king-s. Yin Wei shook his head. In that case, these people should be from a certain force in the Central Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang muttered. Central Divine Kingdom. Yin Wei's gaze trembled. If that was really the case, then he would have to carefully consider whether he should get involved in this mess or not. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, How strong is that Elder Wu? Yin Wei thought for a moment and said, Looking at his aura, he should be stronger than the others. Then there's nothing we can do. Qin Feiyang sighed, feeling weak both physically and mentally. Those 100 or so masked men were not something he could deal with, not to mention the even stronger Elder Wu. Yin Wei was startled and said, You're giving up just like that? Then what else do you want? Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Life is more important than anything, let's go. Yin Wei looked at the central region, sighed deeply, and left with Qin Feiyang. Woo-woo. But at this moment, in the sky, a gust of wind suddenly rose. The whistling sound of the wind was like thunder, resounding through heaven and earth. Yin Wei immediately stopped. The two of them looked up, their eyes full of surprise. In the sky, dark clouds were rolling, as if they could topple mountains and overturn seas. Even within the dark clouds, one could faintly catch traces of lightning arcs that were faintly discernible. What's going on? Yin Wei was surprised. Qin Feiyang shook his head, unable to understand. Suddenly, somewhere in the distant sky, a vortex gradually appeared. As soon as the vortex appeared, the wind in the sky became more and more terrifying. Moreover, it was still rapidly expanding and growing bigger. Qin Feiyang stood in the air like a small boat in the middle of a vast ocean, rocking back and forth. Even when the wind blew, there was a tingling sensation on his skin. Could this be? He stared at the vortex, and a terrifying thought climbed up in his mind. Whoosh! Suddenly, he looked down. Right below the whirlpool, there was a huge mountain. The giant mountain was tens of thousands of feet high, completely red, as if it was cast from magma, and exuded a majestic aura. Could the treasure be on the top of the mountain? Yin Wei was surprised. Qin Feiyang did not say anything, but his eyes were shining brightly. Boom! All of a sudden, a loud sound exploded in the sky, like the 9th heaven divine thunder, shaking Qin Feiyang's blood and qi. Even Yin Wei's face was a little pale. What's that? Yin Wei's eyes were full of shock. Thunder. Qin Feiyang said word by word. Yin Wei's face was full of disbelief. How could thunder be so terrifying? Whoosh! Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his head and looked at the vortex again. He saw that in the vortex, the electric arcs were no longer faintly discernible, but completely visible. There were tens of thousands of electric arcs, like small snakes, crazily moving in the dark clouds, emitting a dazzling light. Just as I expected, retreat. Qin Feiyang whispered to Yin Wei, and quickly retreated. Seeing this, Yin Wei was stunned, and also retreated with Qin Feiyang, and said in surprise, What's going on? Heavenly tribulation. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. What? Yin Wei raised his head and looked at the vortex, his eyes full of horror. I have read countless ancient books, and one of them clearly recorded information about the heavenly tribulation. Every living thing in the world will face the heavenly tribulation when they become gods. If they succeed, they will become gods and control everything in the world. But if they fail, they will be destroyed, and they won't even have the chance to be reincarnated. Qin Feiyang said. Yin Wei said, You mean there is no treasure at all, but someone is going through the heavenly tribulation on the mountain peak? Qin Feiyang nodded. But suddenly, as if he thought of something, his eyes trembled, and he shook his head. No, this is not a heavenly tribulation. Yanwei was stunned and said, if it's not a heavenly tribulation, then what is it? According to the ancient books, when a heavenly tribulation descends, the tribulation clouds are usually golden. But now the tribulation clouds are dark clouds, which doesn't match the information recorded in the ancient books. Is the information recorded in the ancient books wrong? Qin Feiyang frowned, and his eyes were full of confusion. During the conversation, the size of the vortex was already tens of thousands of feet. Inside, electric arcs flashed, and the light was boundless. From afar, the vortex looked like a bright moon. Although I don't know what's going on, this is definitely a heavenly tribulation. The power of a heavenly tribulation is enough to wipe out any living thing. Let's continue to retreat. Qin Feiyang said. Whoosh. The two retreated tens of thousands of feet again, and stood on a mountain peak, looking at the vortex in the sky. Time passed breath by breath. About 100 breaths later, more than a dozen figures rushed over like lightning. It was the mysterious masked men. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened, and said, we can't be discovered by them, continue to retreat. Yanwei waved his hand, turned around and rushed back with Qin Feiyang. Soon, the masked men came to the mountain peak where Qin Feiyang and Li Tianlan had stopped. Glancing around, the masked men landed on the mountain peak one after another. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Li Tianlan also restrained their aura, and landed on a mountain peak half a mile behind. Yanwei looked up at the vortex and said suspiciously, it's been so long, why hasn't the heavenly tribulation appeared yet? Don't worry. It's just brewing now, and it will appear soon, Qin Feiyang said. Before he finished speaking, a bright flame suddenly rushed out from the top of the giant peak directly below the vortex. Boom. Crack. In the sky, thunder suddenly burst out. Chapter 839. How terrifying. The might of the heavens was vast and mighty, intimidating all living things. Qin Feiyang and Yanwei could not help but tremble both physically and mentally. Even those masked men revealed looks of fear on their faces. What exactly is it? Qin Feiyang looked at the flames. The appearance of the heavenly tribulation was definitely related to the flames. Crack. All of a sudden, a resplendent bolt of lightning descended from the sky, heading straight for the peak of the mountain. It was like the light of dawn in the darkness, shining in all directions. Roar. At the same time, on the summit of the mountain, a loud and clear beast roar sounded, filled with a great sense of majesty. Qin Feiyang's expression froze. It was actually a vicious beast undergoing tribulation? He turned to look at Yanwei and said, could it be the beast emperor you were talking about? Impossible. That beast emperor is indeed very strong, but I'm sure that when I first came here, its cultivation would not surpass the war king. Yanwei decisively rejected. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the lightning struck the peak of the mountain. The entire mountain was instantly shattered. At the same time that the mountain was shattered, a vicious beast entered Qin Feiyang's line of sight. It was a fiery red vicious beast. Its body was not big, about 3 to 4 meters long. It looked like a lion, its entire body covered in flames, but there were 2 fiery red wings on its back. Isn't this a fire-winged lion? Yanwei's eyes widened. Along the way, they had encountered countless fire-winged lions. Although this fire-winged lion was much smaller than the other fire-winged lions, it was indeed a fire-winged lion. I think I've seen it before. Furthermore, it's the one that gives me a sense of familiarity. Qin Feiyang whispered. Yanwei was startled, and asked in surprise, isn't this your first time in the Flame Mountain range? How could you have seen it before? I don't know either. Anyway, I just feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if I know it. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the fire-winged lion, his eyes filled with confusion. He was sure that he had never seen this fire-winged lion before. But why did he have such a feeling? Roar. After being bombarded by the heavenly tribulation, the fire-winged lion was covered in blood. However, its bell-like eyes contained an unyielding will, as well as a trace of ridicule and disdain. It gave people the feeling that it was looking down on heaven's might. Crack. Along with a loud rumble, the second god's trial landed. Lightning shot in all directions and lit up the sky. However, not only did the flame-winged lion not dodge, it instead spread its wings and took the initiative to meet the attack. A terrifying ferocious aura spread out in all directions, causing everyone to raise their eyebrows. Boom. The two collided violently like comets. Roar. The flame-winged lion let out a pained howl as its body cracked open. Blood sprayed into the air as it was blasted down into the mountain range below. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. The power of the heavenly tribulation was too terrifying. Even though the fire-winged lion appeared to be unstoppable, there was no way it could withstand it. How strong is it? He looked at Yin Wei and asked. According to my deduction, it should be a 2- or 3-star combat emperor. Yin Wei said. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, then it definitely won't be able to withstand it. Yin Wei frowned and said, let's not talk about whether it can withstand it or not. Let's talk about why it's undergoing the heavenly tribulation first. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He was also puzzled. Logically speaking, regardless of whether it was a beast or a human, the heavenly tribulation would only descend when they were breaking through to the divine war realm. However, the fire-winged lion's cultivation was obviously not enough. Roar. In the blink of an eye, the fire-winged lion that was blasted into the mountain range below rushed up into the sky and roared at the sky, provoking heaven's might. Boom. Crack. It seemed that its provocation had really angered heaven's might. The third heavenly tribulation quickly descended. Moreover, whether it was the speed or the movement, it was more terrifying than the previous 2 heavenly tribulations. Boom. The heavenly tribulation was aggressive and arrived in an instant, striking its body fiercely. The 2 wings on its back broke on the spot and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The fire-winged lion was once again blasted down. In an instant. In this place, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Magma erupted, and the land within a radius of several miles was instantly razed to the ground. Whiz. At the same time, the white-haired old man known as Old Wu flew over with a purple-clothed youth. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned as he looked at the youth from afar. That person was about 25 or 26 years old. He had a tall figure and an imposing appearance. However, at the moment he was also in a sorry state. Yin Wei said in a low voice. The young master that those masked men are talking about should be him. 9-star war sect is not simple. Qin Feiyang muttered. Yin Wei said. Do you think his goal is this fire-winged lion? It's possible. Qin Feiyang nodded. While the two were talking, Old Wu and the purple-clothed youth had already landed in front of the masked men. Greetings, young master. The masked men hurriedly bowed. The purple-clothed youth nodded and lowered his head to look at the fire-winged lion lying in the magma. At this moment, the fire-winged lion's wings were broken, and its body was in tatters. It was on the verge of death and could be said to be in imminent danger. However, the heavenly tribulation did not show any mercy. The fourth bolt of heavenly thunder descended from the sky, roaring through the sky as it crazily struck towards the fire-winged lion. Roar! Suddenly, the fire-winged lion roared and rushed into the air. At the same time, the ground below cracked, and a palm-sized flame rushed out from a crack. Pill fire. Yin Wei glared at him. It's not a pill fire. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He understood pill fire very well. Pill fire had a very special aura, and this cluster of flames did not have the aura of a pill fire. Hurry up and snatch it. At the same time, the purple-clothed youth shouted. A strong desire and greed emerged in his eyes. Whiz. Old Wu immediately rushed towards the flames like lightning. You're courting death. The fire-winged lion also noticed Old Wu at the first moment, and its eyes were filled with an astonishing ferocious light. Boom. Suddenly, a flame rushed out of its body and pounced towards Old Wu with an overwhelming force. If it's not a pill fire, what are they snatching? Yin Wei was surprised. Qin Feiyang was also puzzled. What were these people trying to do? Courting death. Old Wu sneered and said, If it weren't for my young master liking you, I would have killed you long ago. As he spoke, He raised his hand and waved. The battle chi in his palm surged and turned into a torrent that surged forward. Boom! That flame was annihilated on the spot. Puff! The fire-winged lion spat out a mouthful of blood, and its aura became even weaker. Since you don't want to obey, we can only snatch your heart fire. As long as we get it, let's see how you can jump around. Old Wu was unforgiving. He stepped into the air and his old hand grabbed at the heart fire like an eagle's claw. His entire person was like a sharp sword, sharp and threatening. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was indifferent, Yin Wei frowned and said, "Aren't you going to help it?" "How can I help?" Qin Feiyang asked. This fire-winged lion gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He did want to help, but with his little strength, how could he help? Yin Wei's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "Give me one of those ribs." "What do you want to do?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked. "According to my observation, other than Old Wu, the other masked men's cultivations are basically at the 1-star combat emperor level. I want to take a gamble," Yin Wei said. "Are you sure?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Yin Wei nodded. Qin Feiyang did not hesitate, and took out a rib and handed it to Yin Wei. Yin Wei grabbed the rib and hid it in his sleeve. Without hesitation, he used the Heavenly Demon's 9 steps and rushed towards the mountain peak where the purple-clothed youth was. These days, while they were on the road, Yin Wei was also cultivating the Heavenly Demon's 9 steps. Although he was not completely proficient in it, he could still unleash half of its power. The 2 mountain peaks were only half a mile apart. For Yin Wei, who was moving at full speed, it only took a few breaths of time. But at the same time, the masked men also sensed Yin Wei's aura. "You guys didn't leave?" one of the masked men said in surprise. Obviously, he was the one who intercepted Qin Feiyang, and the other two. Yin Wei did not answer, his eyes filled with a sharp light. "You don't know life from death." The masked man's gaze turned cold. He turned around and took a step forward, rushing towards Yin Wei. In that instant, the two of them met in the sky. "Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" Yin Wei laughed coldly. The rib that was hidden in his sleeve fiercely knocked on the masked man's head. "Ah!" The masked man let out a blood-curdling scream, and was sent flying on the spot. His skull was shattered, and several cracks appeared on his head as blood gushed out. However, he was not dead, only injured. But even so, Yin Wei was overjoyed. With full confidence, he rushed straight towards the purple-clothed youth. However, the purple-clothed youth and the other masked men were shocked by the rib. Whose rib was that? It actually had such a terrifying power? Just as they were in a daze, Yin Wei landed on the mountain peak and grabbed the purple-clothed youth's neck. At the same time, Old Wu also grabbed the cluster of heart fire. The 4th heavenly tribulation also struck the fire-winged lion. Boom! The fire-winged lion was once again blasted down, and the magma splashed hundreds of feet high. After snatching the heart fire of the fire-winged lion, Old Wu immediately turned to look at Yin Wei, his eyes gloomy and frightening, and said, "Do you know who you are provoking now?" "I don't know. I don't want to know either." Yin Wei said indifferently, "You will die. Not only will you die, your family, your friends, they will all die because of your stupid actions." The purple-clothed youth was not worried at all. He coldly stared at Yin Wei, as if looking at an ant, full of contempt. "Is that so?" Qin Feiyang took a step forward, walked towards the mountain peak, and said with a faint smile, "Even if we will die, you will definitely die in front of us." The purple-clothed youth's pupils shrank, and he looked at Qin Feiyang with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. "Little bastard, I really regret not killing you at that time." At this time, the masked man who was sent flying roared and rushed towards Qin Feiyang with a murderous aura. "Do you dare to touch him?" Yin Wei's face turned cold, and the big hand that grabbed the purple-clothed youth's neck squeezed hard. Crack! A crisp sound of something shattering could be heard. The masked man's face changed and he quickly stopped. "It's not that I look down on you, but even if you want to kill us, you can't do it." Qin Feiyang glanced at the masked man contemptuously, and landed on the mountain peak, standing beside Yin Wei. Roar! The fire-winged lion let out a roar and dragged its wounded body into the sky. When it saw Qin Feiyang, it could not help but be stunned. It also felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity in its heart. Whoosh. But it did not think too much. Chapter 840. Qin Feiyang looked at the fire-winged lion. From its eyes, it was not difficult to see that this so-called heart fire was extremely important to it. Swish. He suddenly turned his head and looked at old Wu. Return the heart fire to it immediately, or I will kill your young master. You dare. Old Wu shouted angrily, his voice stern. Those masked men also surrounded Qin Feiyang and old Wu, their eyes revealing a fierce light. You don't dare? Qin Feiyang chuckled, took out an ordinary dagger, and gently rubbed the blade. Abruptly, with a wave of his hand, he directly cut off the right arm of the young man in purple. Blood immediately gushed out. The young man in purple was also in so much pain that his face twisted. Then, Qin Feiyang raised his head and grinned at old Wu, saying, Don't challenge my patience. Old Wu said word by word, suppressing his voice. You are borrowing courage from the heavens, do you know that? Are you threatening me? I'm sorry, I'm afraid of everything, but I'm not afraid of threats. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, raised his arm, and cut off the left arm of the young man in purple. Ah! The young man in purple couldn't help but howl miserably. However, old Wu still had no intention of returning the heart fire. Although Qin Feiyang cut off the arms of the young man in purple, he firmly believed that Qin Feiyang would never dare to kill him. Qin Feiyang, of course, could also see what old Wu was thinking. He smiled faintly and said, I don't know if you have heard of the Mu family of the Central Divine Kingdom? Mu family? Old Wu's eyes trembled. The group of masked men also had a hint of fear in their eyes. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one, pursed his lips and smiled. I even dare to kill the demon child, let alone you? What? The demon child was killed by you? Old Wu's face changed. You still don't know? Then you have to ask around. Qin Feiyang laughed. That's impossible. The demon child is second only to the great ancestor, and the second ancestor in the Mu family. With your strength, you can't kill him. Old Wu shook his head in disbelief. It seems that you know a lot about the Mu family. So you should be from the Central Divine Kingdom. And his status in the Central Divine Kingdom is not ordinary. However, your family background is useless to me. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Old Wu looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Suddenly he thought of something and said in surprise, Could it be that you are? Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Yes, I am Qin Feiyang. He took out a face-restoring pill and threw it into his mouth. Soon his true appearance was restored. It's really you. Everyone was dumbfounded. My patience has its limits. I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to return the heart fire? Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the dagger poked the purple youth's crotch. The purple youth's body and mind tightened. A cold current surged into his heart. He quickly shouted, Return the heart fire to him. In fact, old Wu didn't dare to hesitate anymore. Although he had never seen Qin Feiyang before, he had heard about what Qin Feiyang had done in various major regions. Even Qin Feiyang's notoriety had spread throughout the Central Divine Kingdom. This was a man who was not afraid of anything. As long as he said it, he would be able to do it. With a wave of his hand, the heart fire turned into a stream of light and flew toward the fire-winged lion. Crack. At the same time, the fifth tribulation also fell. The fire-winged lion hurriedly rushed over and swallowed the heart fire. At that moment, a magical scene appeared. The injuries on its body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the broken wings on its back were quickly regenerating. When the fifth tribulation fell, its injuries were basically healed. It was full of energy again, and took the initiative to face the tribulation with high fighting spirit. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Such a serious injury was actually healed so quickly. Wasn't this a little too ridiculous? Old Wu glanced at the fire-winged lion and looked at Qin Feiyang gloomily. Can you let go of the young master now? Do you think I'm stupid? If I let him go now, won't you kill me right away? Qin Feiyang looked at him with disdain and secretly told Yan Wei. Be careful, don't let them take him away. Okay. Yan Wei nodded. Old Wu raised his eyebrows and didn't say anything more. He paid close attention to Qin Feiyang and old Wu. As long as there was a chance, he would definitely take action. Boom. The fire-winged lion and the fifth tribulation met in the sky. There was no suspense. The fire-winged lion was blasted down again. But after swallowing the heart fire, the fire-winged lion seemed to have transformed into an unkillable cockroach. Every time it was blasted down, it would quickly stand up tenaciously. The sixth, the seventh, the eighth, after 100 breaths of time, the fire-winged lion had already withstood the ninth tribulation. It's finally over, Qin Feiyang muttered. According to the ancient records, every living being's divine tribulation basically only had 9 heavenly tribulations. However, to Qin Feiyang's surprise, not only did the tribulation clouds in the sky not dissipate, they actually sent down the 10th tribulation. How is this possible? His eyes widened in anger. Could it be? Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes shone brightly. There were basically 9 divine tribulations. But there were some special heavenly tribulations that were more than divine tribulations. Among them, there was a kind of heavenly tribulation called Nirvana divine tribulation. And this kind of Nirvana divine tribulation would only appear under special circumstances. That was the carp leaping over the dragon gate, bloodline returning to its ancestors. In the world, there were certain ferocious beasts that inherited the bloodline power of divine beasts. And once these bloodline powers showed signs of returning to their ancestors, the Nirvana divine tribulation would descend. For example, the black dragon snake had the bloodline power of a true dragon in its body. If one day, it transformed into a true divine dragon, it would also face the baptism of the Nirvana divine tribulation. In other words, the fire-winged lion in front of him might have the bloodline power of a certain divine beast flowing in its body. Or perhaps, it had once fused with the blood of a certain divine beast by chance. And at this moment it was transforming. Crack. The 10th tribulation poured down, emitting a heavenly might that was almost the sum of the previous 9 tribulation. The fire-winged lion looked at the heavenly tribulation with excitement and apprehension in its eyes. Suddenly, it soared into the sky, turned into a stream of light, and collided with the heavenly tribulation. Its eyes were filled with an incomparably determined light. Boom. In an instant, it collided with the heavenly tribulation. A thunderous sound exploded in the sky, shaking the heavens and earth. That void distorted crazily. Roar. At the same time, the fire-winged lion howled and smashed into the ground below, drowned in magma, and did not get up for a long time. Is it dead? Yanwei murmured. Qin Feiyang said, with such a terrifying heavenly might, even if it doesn't die, it will lose a layer of skin. Boom. Before his voice faded, a shocking aura suddenly spread out in the sky. Qin Feiyang looked up. Old Wu and the masked men also looked up at the sky. They saw that the electric arc had disappeared in the vortex, replaced by a flame. As time passed, the flame became more and more intense. In the end, all the dark clouds in the sky were dyed red. At first glance, it looked like a sea of fire burning and rolling in the sky. Roar. Suddenly, accompanied by a loud beast roar, a huge flaming beast shadow roared out of the vortex. That beast shadow was hundreds of feet tall, like a towering mountain, running and roaring in the sky. The flame illuminated half of the sky. It was like a supreme beast descending, exuding a great majesty that shrouded the world. Not to mention Qin Feiyang. Even Old Wu and the masked men could not help but have the thought of kneeling down and worshipping in their hearts. Suddenly, the beast's silhouette stopped and revealed its true appearance. What? Qin Feiyang exclaimed, his eyes almost popping out. That beast looked very strange. It looked like a musk deer, but it had a head like a dragon's and a huge tail like an ox's. His body was also covered in densely packed scales. They looked like snake scales, but they also looked more like dragon scales. Moreover, on its head, there were 2 half-meter-long antlers, red all over, blooming with a bright light. What kind of beast is this? Yanwei's face was dull. Although this ferocious beast didn't look like one, it was very handsome, and the aura it exuded was like a real god. Dragon's head, antlers, ox's tail, elk's body. If I'm not wrong, it's the legendary divine beast Fire Qilin. Qin Feiyang said word by word, his eyes full of shock. It could be seen that the fire-winged lion's previous tribulation was indeed the nirvana tribulation. Fire Qilin. Yanwei's body trembled. He also knew a little about the fire Qilin. It was said that this fire Qilin was a legendary divine beast, comparable to the divine dragon, and had the ability to defy the heavens. He never expected that after the fire-winged lion's tribulation, a fire Qilin statue would descend. Rumble. That fire Qilin stood high in the sky like a king, overlooking the world. This world seemed to be subdued under its feet. The void shattered and the sky collapsed. Boom. Suddenly, a wisp of flame swept out of its body and went straight down. Finally, the flame sank into the magma and disappeared. The next moment, the fire-winged lion floated out of the magma. It closed its eyes, covered in flames, as if it was sleeping, looking particularly peaceful. However, its body was quietly changing. First, the head. The head kept changing, and in less than 10 breaths, a dragon head appeared in everyone's sight. Then, its fur fell off bit by bit, and was replaced by fiery red scales. Then its body, tail, eyes and limbs also began to change. Until the end, a real fire Qilin appeared high in the sky. A terrifying divine beast's power also spread out, shocking the hearts of everyone present. Fire Qilin. Qin Feiyang's eyes were shining like two bright moons. He really didn't expect. This fire-winged lion actually had the bloodline power of the divine beast Fire Qilin. Swish. He turned to look at old Wu and asked, "You already knew?" "That's right. It's also because we found out that it has the bloodline power of the fire Qilin that young master wanted to subdue it. But this beast would rather die than submit. Originally, we wanted to forcibly take out its heart fire, because for the fire Qilin, the heart fire is their lifeline. As long as the heart fire is controlled by us, it has no choice but to submit. But this beast is also very cunning. It actually hid the heart fire." Old Wu's old face was incomparably gloomy. Qin Feiyang said, "You are far away in the central divine kingdom. How did you know that there is a fire-winged lion with the bloodline power of the Qilin here?" "Our tribe's totem is the fire Qilin. We have been looking for it, hoping to find a real fire Qilin to be our tribe's guardian beast. Now we finally found it, but I didn't expect it to be destroyed by you." Old Wu stared at Qin Feiyang, his old face full of resentment. Chapter 841. You people with powerful families and backgrounds have always been high and mighty. You don't take others seriously. I just feel that it's a very pleasant thing to be able to spoil your plans. Qin Feiyang laughed. Elder Wu's face darkened. Roar. At this moment, with an earth-shaking beast roar, the fire Qilin in the sky got into the vortex and disappeared. The tribulation clouds also began to recede like the tide. Elder Wu looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "When will you let him go?" Qin Feiyang said, "When I'm out of danger, I will let him go." Elder Wu's eyes flashed coldly. Whoosh! The tribulation clouds receded, and the heavenly power disappeared. The world gradually returned to calm. The masked men who were guarding the other directions also rushed over here one after another. What's going on? Why was the young master kidnapped? Isn't he the rumored Qin Feiyang? When these people arrived and saw Qin Feiyang, their faces changed drastically. Yanwei glanced at those people's expressions and secretly joked, "It seems that your name has really spread throughout the central divine kingdom." "Actually, I didn't do anything bad." Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly. Whether it was slaughtering the creatures in the first and second areas, or snatching the alchemy fire in the 5th to 9th areas, it had nothing to do with him. He really couldn't figure out why no matter where he went, there would be people who would come to him. Could it be that he was born to attract criticism? Fortunately, Lu Hong had recorded his conversation with the Mu family's ancestor. Otherwise, even if he jumped into the netherworld, he wouldn't be able to clear his name. Gossip is a fearful thing. Yanwei sighed. To be honest, if it wasn't for the time he spent with Qin Feiyang and knew about Qin Feiyang, if he didn't hear the Mu family's ancestors' words with his own ears, even he would believe that all of this was done by Qin Feiyang. At this moment, all the masked men gathered around. More than 100 battle emperors surrounded Qin Feiyang and Qin Wentian. Faced with such a situation, if it were anyone else, Even if they were controlling the purple-clothed youth, they would probably have lost their composure. Yan Wei was the best example. Looking at the hundreds of battle emperors around him, his face was filled with anxiety. Even the arm that was holding onto the purple-robed young man was trembling. But Qin Feiyang was very calm. He looked up at the fire-winged lion. No, it should be called the fire qilin now. He looked at the fire qilin in bewilderment. One had to know. He had never seen this fire qilin before, but why did it give him this kind of indescribable feeling of familiarity? A moment passed. The fire qilin's injuries were mostly healed. It opened its eyes and scanned everyone present. Finally, its gaze fell on Qin Feiyang. In its eyes, Qin Feiyang could clearly see a trace of gratitude. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "This is not a good place to stay. You should leave quickly." "What about you?" the fire qilin asked. Its voice was very loud and deafening. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Don't worry about me, I can walk away." The fire qilin looked at him suspiciously and suddenly asked, "Why are you helping me?" Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I don't know, it's a feeling." "All right. We'll meet again." Without any hesitation, the fire qilin turned into a ray of fire and quickly disappeared into the sky. Seeing the fire qilin leave without looking back, for some reason, Qin Feiyang felt an inexplicable sadness and reluctance in his heart. Could it be that I've really seen it before? Qin Feiyang was very confused. Whoosh! Suddenly, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. Someone else is coming? Everyone was shocked. They looked up and saw a purple figure flying through the air like lightning. It's him. Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei suddenly changed color. It was a purple-clothed old man. He had a ruddy face and white hair. His body was strong and his aura was as unfathomable as the ocean. That's right. He is the Wuxia's second ancestor. At the same time, the purple-clothed old man also noticed Qin Feiyang. His old eyes suddenly burst out in amazing light. Yan Wei shouted, "Not good, let's go." The purple-clothed young man can threaten old Wu and the group of masked people, but certainly not the Wuxia's second ancestor. If they continue to stay, it's absolutely a dead end. Buzz. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and quickly opened a portal. Still want to escape? Seeing this, the Wuxia's second ancestor sneered. A terrible pressure, like a tide, swept through the sky and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Yan Wei shouted, "It's too late, quickly enter the castle." Qin Feiyang's eyes sank. If they enter the castle, the Wuxia will certainly continue to waste time with him. At present, there are not many herbs left for the battle Qidan. He simply does not have the capital to waste time with the Wuxia. But now, it seems that there is no other way. Really unlucky. He angrily glared at the Wuxia's second ancestor, and took Yan Wei and the purple-clothed young man into the castle. Bastard. Let go of the young master. Seeing this situation, old Wu and the group of masked people were also anxious. Whoosh. The purple-clothed old man landed in front of old Wu. The terrifying pressure firmly imprisoned the group of people. He coldly said, "Who are you? What is your relationship with Qin Feiyang?" At this moment, old Wu and the others couldn't help but feel cold. Old Wu respectfully said, "I am the high priest of the Qilin tribe. May I ask who you are?" The purple-clothed old man said, "This old man is the Wuxia's second ancestor." Wuxia's second ancestor. Old Wu's body trembled. He quickly said, "Greetings, my lord." "Yes." The purple-clothed old man nodded. "What are you doing here?" "We're here for the fire qilin." Old Wu didn't dare to hide the slightest thing. He recounted the previous situation in detail. It turned out that the fire-winged lion was crossing the Nirvana tribulation. No wonder even the people in the 9th area could feel a trace of heavenly power. What about the fire qilin? The purple-clothed old man suddenly realized and asked. "It ran away. My family's young master was also held hostage by Qin Feiyang." Old Wu said, "You guys are truly unlucky. You actually met Qin Feiyang, this fiend. However, a peerless beast like the fire qilin is not something that a small tribe like yours is qualified to have." The purple-clothed old man smiled disdainfully. Which direction did the fire qilin go? This, Old Wu hesitated. Because it's obvious that the Mujia also wants the fire Qilin. If the Mujia makes a move, then the Qilin tribe basically has nothing to do with it. The purple-clothed old man raised his eyebrows. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. If you dare to say that you don't know, this old man will dig out all of your eyeballs. Old Wu's face turned pale, and hurriedly said, I know, it went in the direction of the 8th area, but whether it went to the 8th area or not, I don't know. The purple-clothed old man heard this, was silent for a while, and took out the image crystal. Buzz. Soon, a black-clothed old woman appeared. It was the previous housekeeper of the Mujia. The black-clothed old woman bowed and said, Greetings to the second ancestor. Quickly inform the patriarch that a fire Qilin has appeared in the Flame Mountain range, and is fleeing to the 8th area. Ask him to immediately send someone to intercept it. By the way, tell the great ancestor that I found Qin Feiyang, and he is also in the Flame Mountain range. The purple-clothed old man said, Fire Qilin. The black-clothed old woman's eyes trembled, and hurriedly said, I'll go find the patriarch right away. After that, the shadow disappeared. The purple-clothed old man also put away the image crystal, looked at Old Wu and the others and said, You guys go. Go. A group of people looked at each other. Old Wu swallowed his saliva, and said, Lord, we don't want to stay here and disturb you, but our young master is still in the hands of Qin Feiyang. Don't have any hope. I know Qin Feiyang too well. As long as someone falls into his hands, there will be no way to survive. The purple-clothed old man sneered. Old Wu's heart sank. The purple-clothed old man said with a blank expression, This old man doesn't want to say it again. Okay, we'll leave now. Old Wu nodded again and again, unwillingly looked at the place where Qin Feiyang and the others disappeared, and then opened a portal, leading a group of people, and quickly left. At the same time, inside the castle, Yan Wei has released the purple-clothed young man, and at this moment, he was looking at the castle curiously. Qin Feiyang, on the other hand, was carefully listening to the conversation outside. When he heard the introduction of the conversation outside, Qin Feiyang turned to look at the purple-clothed young man and asked, What's your name? The purple-clothed young man's body stiffened. He stared at Qin Feiyang with vigilance and said, Wuxia. Qin Feiyang asked, What's the status of your Kirin tribe in the Central Divine Kingdom? It's not bad, it's one of the top 10 tribes. Wuxia timidly said. If he didn't know the true identity of Qin Feiyang, he would certainly be proud. And as the young master of the Kirin tribe, one of the top 10 tribes in the Central Divine Kingdom, he indeed has the capital to be proud. But now, he really didn't dare to be arrogant in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said in surprise, There are so many super tribes in the Central Divine Kingdom? Wu Xiao nodded. So your status is not low, but why can't your high priest recognize the second ancestor of the Mujia? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Because the Mujia is very mysterious, and they rarely appear in front of people, we basically only know the existence of the Mujia, especially the great ancestor, the second ancestor, and the demon child. Since I was born, I have never seen them appear in the Central Divine Kingdom. So we have only heard of their names, but have never seen them in person. Wu Xiao said. So that's it. Qin Feiyang suddenly nodded. At this time, Fatso opened his eyes and said worriedly, Boss, the battle Qi Dan is really running out. We can't waste any more time with the Mujia. I know. Qin Feiyang said. Yan Wei hesitated and said, The battle Qi Dan, we don't need to think about it for the time being. What do you mean? Everyone looked at him in surprise. When the mysterious lady took away my people, I went to the tribe's treasure house and took a part of the medicinal materials. The medicinal materials for the battle Qi Dan are estimated to be more than 5 million. Yan Wei said. Several people looked at each other. This is really an unexpected surprise. Fatso said angrily. Why didn't you say so earlier? Fat Lord has been here for so long. Yan Wei scratched his head and said awkwardly, I thought such a thing would never happen again, so I didn't mention it. Everyone shook their heads and laughed. In any case, the current problem has been solved. However, more than 5 million sets of medicinal materials, it's not a small amount, but it's not a lot either. At the current rate of consumption, they can only last for about half a year, so they can't completely put down their worries and hide in the castle to cultivate. Chapter 842. What do you want? The young man in purple shrank his neck and put his hands in front of his chest, as if he was guarding against a pervert. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. Do you have any medicinal materials for the battle chi pill? I'm not an alchemist, so I don't have any. The young man in purple shook his head. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Then give me the coordinates of the Central Divine Kingdom. You want to go to the Central Divine Kingdom? The young man in purple was surprised. Qin Feiyang nodded. The young man in purple was dumbfounded. He knew. Now whether it was the Pill Tower or the Mu family, they were all looking for this guy. Anyone with a little sense would choose to find a place to hide in the 9 regions. However, this guy actually took the initiative to go there. He was really not afraid of death. Seeing that the young man in purple was silent for a long time, Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said unkindly, You don't want to give me the coordinates? The young man in purple quickly said, It's not that I don't want to give you the coordinates, but it's useless even if I give you the coordinates. Why? Qin Feiyang asked. Because the portal can't directly teleport to the Central Divine Kingdom. There is only one way to enter the Central Divine Kingdom, and that is through the portal of the Pill Tower in the 9th region. The young man in purple said. The portal again. Qin Feiyang was quite angry. In the Great Qin Empire, people in the 9 regions also had to go through the portal if they wanted to go to the capital. In fact, there was an advantage to this. It could prevent some people with bad intentions from sneaking into the capital and the Central Divine Kingdom without being noticed. But on the other hand, this practice had a taste of discrimination. Because they were all from the same continent, why should they set up such barriers to hinder others? Didn't this show that people in other places were inferior to the people in the capital and the Central Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyang frowned. Is there no other way to enter the Central Divine Kingdom besides the portal? The people of the Mu family and the Pill Tower must be waiting for them at the portal, so they must not go there. Yes, but it's very dangerous. There is a vast ocean between the Central Divine Kingdom and the 9th region. We call it the Endless Sea. I've never been there, but I've heard that there are countless sea beasts there. And there are all kinds of dangerous places. I can tell you with certainty that since ancient times, there has never been anyone who has successfully crossed the Endless Sea. The purple-clad young man said. Qin Feiyang asked, How strong are those sea beasts? It's said that emperor-level sea beasts travel in groups. There are even rumors that there is a divine beast hidden somewhere in the Endless Sea. This divine beast is not something the fire Qilin can compare to. It is said that it is a true deity, the purple-clad young man said in a deep voice. God. Qin Feiyang felt a chill in his heart. Regardless of whether this rumor was true or false, just those emperor-level sea beasts were enough to make people feel intimidated. Qin Feiyang said, Then give me the coordinates of the Pill Tower in the 9th region. The purple-clad young man said, I won't give you the coordinates, but I can take you there. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at the purple-clad young man with a playful smile. You're quite smart. You know this is your only bargaining chip. Humph. The purple-clad young man snorted from his nose and said, Although my Qilin tribe is not as strong as the Mu family and the Pill Tower, it's not something you can compete with now. If you dare to touch me, I promise you will regret it in the future. TSK. You're still being arrogant. Fatso looked at him maliciously, his face full of ridicule. The purple-clad young man shrunk his neck and said, I'm not being arrogant, I'm just stating a fact. Instead of hurting me, you might as well cooperate with me. With my help, you will have a higher chance of sneaking into the Central Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang said, Then tell me, how can you help me? To be honest, he was a little tempted. When old Wu goes back, he will certainly explain this to my father, and my father will certainly come to me in person. At that time you can change your face, pretend to be a member of my tribe, and follow me into the Central Divine Kingdom. Of course, the premise is that you have to find a way to get rid of the Mu family's second ancestor, otherwise, we will be trapped here and can't go anywhere. The purple-clad young man said. Qin Feiyang heard and couldn't help but laugh. The purple-clad young man frowned. What are you laughing at? I have to say you're still too naive. The Mu family wants to catch me. Even if I change my face and follow you, I can't escape their interrogation. Because in this world, there are things called Heaven's Eye Stone and Facial Restoration Pill. Unless your Qilin tribe is strong enough to not accept the Mu family's interrogation. But do you dare? Actually, I have an idea. Qin Feiyang said. What idea? The purple-clad young man asked. I have a conversation record in my hand. As long as this conversation record is successfully handed over to the pill tower, they will definitely send someone to save me, Qin Feiyang said. What conversation record? The purple-clad young man was surprised. One should know that what Qin Feiyang did in the 9 regions had completely angered the pill tower. It can be said that the pill tower's people can't wait to skin him alive, so how could they save him? You don't need to know this. You just need to remember, don't play any tricks, otherwise, no matter where you hide, I can kill you. Cripple his cultivation. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, Yanwei immediately waved his hand and shattered the purple-clad young man's qi. What are you doing? The purple-clad young man was shocked and angry. The severe pain made his face distorted. Qin Feiyang ignored him. His hands quickly formed a seal, and soon a slave seal appeared and disappeared into the purple-clad young man's mind. This is the slave seal. Even if you are in the central divine kingdom, I can erase your soul with just a thought, Qin Feiyang said. Slave seal? The purple-clad young man looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Yanwei sighed. Don't think that he is joking. Because of this, I have to work for him. Hearing this, the purple-clad young man was shocked. Even a battle saint can be controlled. Isn't this too ridiculous? Qin Feiyang said. Take out your image crystal. Okay. The purple-clad young man quickly responded and obediently took out the image crystal. After the two established a contract bridge, Qin Feiyang said, Go out after you repair your qi. Be careful of the Mu clan's second ancestor. He is likely to harm you. No way. I didn't offend him. The purple-clad young man was surprised. When facing the Mu clan's people, you better not have such a wishful thinking. Fatso smiled coldly. Okay. I'll be careful. The purple-clad young man looked at Fatso and nodded, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, That recording you won't give me? When you see the pill tower's people, send me a message, then I will send it to you, Qin Feiyang said. Okay. The purple-clad young man nodded. Then, Qin Feiyang took out a spirit sea pill and threw it to the purple-clad young man. For Dan Veins. The purple-clad young man caught the spirit sea pill. His face was full of shock. Qin Feiyang frowned. Don't talk nonsense, quickly repair your qi. About half an hour later, the purple-clad young man finally repaired his qi. Qin Feiyang didn't hesitate, waved his hand and sent the purple-clad young man out of the castle. Fatso said, Do you think the Mu clan's old monster will kill him? The Wolf King pondered for a moment before saying, Most likely. Don't say such unlucky words. Now whether we can turn things around or not depends on him. Qin Feiyang stared at Fatso and Wolf King, then calmed down and listened to the movements outside. At the same time, outside, since Qin Feiyang entered the ancient castle, the exposed ancient castle would automatically sink. Therefore, the place where the purple-clothed youth appeared was in the magma of the mountain range below. The temperature of the magma was extremely high and could instantly melt steel, but the purple-clad young man was a 9-star battle master, so it was not a threat to him. Bang! He leaped out of the magma. Boom! As soon as he rushed out of the magma, a terrifying pressure enveloped him. Where's Qin Feiyang? Following. A bone-chilling voice entered his ears. The purple-clad young man's face changed, and he quickly looked up and saw the Mu clan's second ancestor standing above his head. Greetings, senior. He hurriedly bowed and said. The Mu clan's second ancestor said impatiently, I'm asking you where Qin Feiyang is now, answer me quickly. The purple-clad young man's body trembled, and he respectfully replied, He's still hiding in that castle. The Mu clan's second ancestor narrowed his eyes. Then why did he let you go? I made a deal with him. I gave him the coordinates of the Pill Pagoda in District 9, and he agreed to let me go. The purple-clad young man said, his heart vigilant. Is that so? Didn't he give you anything? The Mu clan's second ancestor said. What can he give me? The purple-clad young man was puzzled. Strange. The Mu clan's second ancestor frowned. Could it be that this little bastard didn't have any evidence in his hands, and was just scaring them? No. I'd rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. The Mu clan's second ancestor muttered, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The purple-clad young man suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. His whole body was cold. He quickly knelt in the void and begged, Senior, I don't know anything, please don't kill me. I only believe that in this world, only the dead will keep their mouths shut forever. The Mu clan's second ancestor said expressionlessly. His old hand reached out, and an invisible force surged out. My lord, please show mercy. At this moment, an anxious shout rang out. Whoosh! Before the voice fell, 2 figures appeared out of thin air in the void not far away. One of them was Elder Wu. The other person was a middle-aged man about 1.8 meters tall, wearing a fitted white robe. His hair was half black and half white, and he was full of vicissitudes of life. Father, save me quick. Seeing the middle-aged man, the purple-clad young man seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw, and quickly called for help. The identity of this person was naturally clear, the leader of the Qilin tribe. Whoosh! As soon as the two appeared, they stood in front of the purple-clad young man. Don't be afraid. Chapter 843. The Mu family's second ancestor glanced at the 3 people, frowning slightly. A moment later, he lowered his arm and said, I can let him go, but before we catch Qin Feiyang, he must stay in the Mu family. Why? The Qilin tribe leader was puzzled. There is no why, you just have to nod your head, or else, you will all die here. The Mu family's second ancestor said, a cold light surging in his eyes. Although he didn't know whether Qin Feiyang had evidence or not, he must eliminate all possibilities. And Qin Feiyang letting go of the purple-clothed youth, in his opinion, was very abnormal. So he had to be careful. Sir, I respect you, but your way of doing things, isn't it too much? The Qilin tribe leader frowned. You should respect me. As for whether it's too much or not, it's up to me. The Mu family's second ancestor said lightly, although his words were plain, they were overbearing. The Qilin tribe leader and old man Wu couldn't help but show a trace of anger in their eyes. I admit, your Mu family is very strong, my Qilin tribe can't even catch up. But don't forget, the Pill Tower is the ruler of the Forgotten Continent. And your Mu family, after all, is just an outsider. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. This time I came to find you, my people all know. If something happens to me here, my people will definitely go to the head of the Pill Tower to explain this matter. And my Qilin tribe, although in your eyes is nothing, but in any case, it is still one of the top 10 tribes of the Central Divine Kingdom. I believe the head of the Pill Tower won't sit idly by, the Qilin tribe leader said. In other words, he has the backing of the Pill Tower. You dare to touch him? Hearing these words, the Mu family's second ancestor's face became very ugly. As an existence second only to the ancestor, no one dared to speak to him like this, because these words were obviously a threat. But frankly speaking, now he really didn't dare to touch the Qilin tribe's leader and high priest. Because the Qilin tribe's leader was right, the Pill Tower is the supreme ruler of the Forgotten Continent. And all the major tribes of the Central Divine Kingdom also follow the Pill Tower's lead. If he touched the Qilin tribe's people, the Pill Tower will definitely not sit idly by. At that time, the Mu family will be facing the whole world's enemy. Of course, it's not that the Mu family is afraid of the Pill Pagoda. It was just that it wasn't time to fall out with him yet. This old man just wants your son to be a guest in my Mu family. This request is actually not too much. Mu Jia's second ancestor said. No matter what, he would not let the purple-clothed youth leave today. Just a guest? The leader of the Qilin tribe was bewildered. Yes. This old man promises you that after we capture Qin Feiyang, this old man will personally send him back to your Qilin tribe. The Mu Jia's second ancestor nodded. The Qilin tribe leader and Old Wu looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with doubt. Old Wu was puzzled. My lord, I don't understand. What does your capture of Qin Feiyang have to do with my young master? Don't ask what you shouldn't. I've already given you enough face. If you continue to pester me endlessly, I won't be polite anymore. Mujia's second ancestor said in a deep voice. Their pupils shrank. Although the Mu clan's second grandfather had some intentions of compromising, after all, the strength and background of the Mu clan's people were right in front of them. They didn't dare to push their luck. Finally, the Qilin tribe leader gritted his teeth and nodded. All right, as long as you don't hurt my son, you can take him away. Mujia's second ancestor smiled and said. Then please go back. The purple-clothed youth quickly said. Father, I don't want to go to the Mu family, I beg you. He now really believes that Qin Feiyang's conversation record is very unfavorable to the Mu family. Otherwise, the Mu family's second ancestor wouldn't have tried so hard to keep him here. Although the Mu family's second ancestor promised not to hurt him, who knows what will happen after he goes to the Mu family? So he's afraid. Don't be afraid, the Mu family is powerful, they certainly won't do anything that goes back on their word. You just need to stay here for a while. The Qilin tribe leader smiled and comforted him. The purple-clothed youth still wanted to say something. The Qilin tribe leader said, You're a man, don't be so wishy-washy, it's settled. Immediately. He then looked at the Mu family's second ancestor and said, During this time, I'll have to trouble you to take care of my son. Yes. The Mu family's second ancestor faintly nodded. The Qilin tribe leader patted the purple-clothed youth's shoulder and quietly said, Child, in fact this is a good thing. The Mu family is mysterious, you can just go in and understand. After that, he waved his hand and opened a portal, turned to look at Old Wu and said, Let's go. Old Wu secretly said, You're really at ease. What can I do if I'm not at ease? This old thing obviously won't change his mind. If we dare to refuse again, I'm afraid we'll really be killed by him. The Qilin tribe leader secretly said and then stepped into the portal, his eyes were quite hazy. Alas! Old Wu deeply sighed, secretly told the purple-clothed youth and also followed into the portal. Why am I so unlucky? The purple-clothed youth secretly said, his face full of helplessness and pain. Soon, the portal disappeared. The Mu family's second ancestor's eyes flashed, looked at the purple-clothed youth and asked again. Qin Feiyang really didn't give you anything? No. The purple-clothed youth shook his head. He was sure that if he told the truth, before Qin Feiyang erased his soul, this old thing would have already done something to him. The Mu family's second ancestor looked at him seriously and said, Okay, this old man will now call someone to take you to the Mu family. After that, he took out the image crystal. It won't work. It seems that now we can only slowly waste time with the Mu family. Inside the castle, Fatso sighed. Qin Feiyang and the others also looked worried. Originally, they wanted to rely on the purple-clothed youth to turn the tables, but they didn't expect to be stopped by the Mu family's second ancestor. When the purple-clothed youth went to the Mu family, under the Mu family's surveillance, he had no chance to find the Pill Tower's people. Roar. But suddenly there was a change. A loud roar of a beast could be heard coming from outside, shaking the surroundings. Ha! Qin Feiyang and the others were surprised. At the same time, outside, the Mu family's second ancestor and the purple-clothed youth were also surprised. Immediately looked up and saw on a mountain peak a few miles away, a majestic beast stood. It was the fire Qilin. Its whole body was surrounded by flames, like a king, standing on the edge of the cliff, coldly looking at the Mu family's second ancestor. Didn't it leave? Why did it come back? The purple-clothed youth was stunned. But the Mu family's second ancestor's old face was full of ecstasy. It really is the legendary beast, the fire Qilin. Wait for me here, he said to the purple-clothed youth without looking back, and rushed towards the fire Qilin. Roar! The fire Qilin roared, turned into a flame, and quickly disappeared into the sky. Stand there! The Mu family's second ancestor shouted. His speed was much faster than the fire Qilin, and in the blink of an eye, he closed the distance. Now, the purple-clothed youth's eyes flashed, quickly opened a portal, and rushed in like lightning. Inside the castle. What's going on? Didn't we let it go? Why did it come back? Qin Feiyang frowned. It can't be that in order to save you. It deliberately came back to lure the Mu family's second ancestor away. Lu Hong said. Save me? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Stupid. Immediately he cursed and quickly left the castle with Yan Wei, rushed into the sky, and scanned the surroundings. At this moment, there was no trace of the fire Qilin and the Mu family's second ancestor. Yan Wei frowned. Where's Wu Xiao? Do you still need to think? He must have taken the opportunity to run away. Qin Feiyang sneered. Yan Wei said, then let's take the opportunity to run away. No. The fire Qilin came back to save us. And its cultivation is far less than the Mu family's second ancestor. I can't leave it alone. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Who said that beasts are ruthless? In fact, beasts know how to repay kindness more than some people. I know you're a righteous person, but it depends on the time. I'm telling you, if you run now, not only will you not be able to save it, but you will also lose yourself. Yan Wei said angrily. Roar. Before his voice fell, the fire Qilin's roar sounded again, with a trace of pain. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands, used the phantom steps, and rushed in the direction of the roar. Damn it. Yan Wei cursed angrily and quickly caught up with Qin Feiyang. You said the fire Qilin is confused. I think you're even more confused than it. After that, he waved his hand, rolled up Qin Feiyang, and used the demon's 9 steps, like a flash of lightning breaking through the sky. About 10 breaths. The two stopped above a mountain peak, looking at the void in the distance. In that place, the fire Qilin stood in the void, constantly roaring, but unable to move. The Mu family's second ancestor stood next to the fire Qilin. His eyes were burning. Obviously, the fire Qilin was imprisoned by the majesty of the Mu family's second ancestor. Bastard. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold. Seeing this, Yan Wei hurriedly grabbed him and advised, don't be impulsive. The fire Qilin sacrificed itself to give you a way out. If you rush up now, wouldn't you be letting down its good intentions? Qin Feiyang said, don't worry, I won't be impulsive. Whoosh. It was also at this moment, the Mu family's second ancestor seemed to feel something, and turned his head to look behind. When he saw Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei, he couldn't help but look stunned. Then, he raised his eyebrows, turned to look at the fire Qilin and said, you came back to save him? The fire Qilin coldly glanced at him, then looked up at Qin Feiyang and angrily said, what are you doing here? Go. Thank you. Qin Feiyang bowed. The fire Qilin said, I'm just repaying your favor, no need to thank me. Qin Feiyang faintly smiled, and without hesitation, decisively opened a portal, and went in with Yan Wei. It was too late for the Mu family's second ancestor to stop them. He could only watch Qin Feiyang disappear in front of his eyes. Whoosh. He suddenly turned his head, stared at the fire Qilin and roared. What did he do for you, that you would help him like this? Even disregarding your own life? He's better than you. The fire Qilin smiled coldly, then closed its eyes and no longer spoke. It had an attitude of, if you want to kill me, then do whatever you want. Damn bastard. If it weren't for the fact that you're a mythological beast, this old man would definitely kill you. The Mu family's second ancestor said coldly, then opened a portal and forcibly left with the fire Qilin. Chapter 844. At the edge of the Flame Mountain Range, there was a majestic mountain ridge. At this moment, Qin Feiyang stood above the mountain ridge, looking into the depths of the Flame Mountain Range, his eyes flashing with a shocking cold light. Yan Wei, on the other hand, stood beside him in silence. After a while, Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal and poured his battle chi into it. At the same time, somewhere in the 9th district, there was a huge city. This city was called Ice Crystal City. As the name suggested, Ice Crystal City was covered in snow all year round. Every building, including every street, was covered with a thick layer of ice. In the center of the city, an ancient stone tower stood between heaven and earth, emitting a cold aura. It was the Pill Tower. In front of the tower, there was a huge square, and the teleportation altar was located in the center of the square. At this moment, at the edge of the square, hundreds of figures stood upright. They were wearing black armor with sharp eyes, holding a long halberd in their hands, showing off their sharpness. In addition to them, there was a group of people who were particularly eye-catching. There were a total of more than 50 people in this group. They were wearing black with a flame symbol on their chest. They surrounded the teleportation altar, their aura unfathomable. At the same time, in front of the altar, there was a white-haired old man sitting cross-legged. He closed his eyes, as if he was recuperating. There was no symbol on his body, but the aura he exuded was many times stronger than those men in black. On the surrounding streets, everyone who passed by here looked at the white-haired old man with awe. At this moment, on the southern street, a figure was hurrying towards the square. It was the purple-clothed youth Wuxia. Buzz. Seeing that he was about to reach the square, the image crystal in his arms suddenly moved. He stopped and took out the image crystal, with a trace of surprise in his eyes. Who would send me a message at this time? Father? Or Qin Feiyang? I can't reply. If it's Qin Feiyang, there will be a lot of trouble. He kept the image crystal, and continued to walk towards the square. At the same time, in the air above the Flame Mountain range, Yanwei asked suspiciously, "Who are you sending a message to?" Qin Feiyang laughed and said, "Who else could it be other than Wu Xiao?" Yanwei frowned and said, "He hasn't responded for so long. It seems like he doesn't want to see you anymore." "That's not up to him." A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. With a thought, the purple-clothed young man from the Ice Crystal City immediately fell to the ground, holding his head and howling in pain. He felt as if his head was about to explode. The intense pain was unbearable. What happened? The people around him stopped and looked at him in surprise. The black-armored guards on the square also looked at the purple-clothed young man with vigilance in their eyes. He seems to be the young chief of the Qilin tribe Wu Xiao. Didn't his father just say that he's going to the Mu family? The group of black-clothed men guarding the altar were also whispering to each other. "Let's go and take a look." Suddenly, the white-haired old man said, but his eyes were still closed. "Yes," a black-clothed man respectfully responded, strode out of the square, and walked towards the purple-clothed young man. At this time, the purple-clothed young man had stopped howling, and the pain in his head also disappeared. But he squatted on the ground, his heart was filled with fear. He originally thought that Qin Feiyang was just scaring him. But now it seems that this is not the case. The slave seal can really control his soul. "What's wrong? Do you need help?" The black-clothed man walked in front of him and asked. No need. It's just a sudden headache. I'm fine now. Thank you." The purple-clothed young man quickly got up and said respectfully. The black-clothed man looked at him suspiciously and said, "Didn't your father say that you're going to the Mu family? Why are you alone now?" The purple-clothed young man rolled his eyes, smiled and said, "I have something to do. I'll go another day." "So it's like this." The man in black suddenly nodded and asked curiously, "Can you tell me why the Mu family invited you as a guest?" The purple-clothed young man hesitated for a moment, shook his head and said, "To be honest, I don't know." "You don't know?" The black-clothed man was surprised. But looking at the purple-clothed young man's expression, he didn't seem to be lying. "This Mu family, what are they trying to do?" The purple-clothed young man said, "Sir, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." "Where are you going?" "Back to the Central Divine Kingdom?" the black-clothed man asked. "No rush. It's not easy to come to Ice Crystal City. I must have fun for a while." The purple-clothed young man smiled. The black-clothed man was speechless for a while and waved his hand. "Go." "Okay." The purple-clothed young man smiled and ran away. "Sure enough, he's a playboy." The black-clothed man shook his head and didn't think much about it. He turned and walked toward the square. Near the square, in a small alley, the purple-clothed young man walked in with a gloomy face. Seeing that there was no one around, he took out the image crystal. Buzz. The next moment, an illusory figure appeared. It was Qin Feiyang. "Do you think you can run away? If I didn't show mercy just now, I'm afraid you'd be dead on the street now." Qin Feiyang faintly smiled. The purple-clothed young man's eyes trembled and said in a deep voice, "What do you want to let me go?" "Don't worry, when the time comes, I'll definitely let you go. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, now give me your coordinates. Sigh. The purple-clothed young man sighed deeply and gave the coordinates to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang immediately opened a portal and brought Yan Wei to the purple-clothed young man. What's next? The purple-clothed young man looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. Qin Feiyang said, tell me about the situation here. The alchemy fire here. Wasn't it you who took it? I heard that even the tower master here was killed by your accomplice. Do you still need me to tell you? The purple-clothed young man frowned. Yan Wei raised his eyebrows and shouted, don't talk nonsense, just tell me. The purple-clothed young man shrunk his neck and said, this is called Ice Crystal City. The pill tower and the teleportation altar are nearby, but now the teleportation altar is guarded not only by the people of the City Lord Mansion, but also by the people of the Central Tower, and even a messenger. What about the Mu family? Qin Feiyang asked. I don't see them. Maybe they're hiding in the crowd. Of course, I've never seen the Mu family before. Even if they stand in front of me, I won't recognize them. The purple-clothed young man said. Qin Feiyang nodded and pondered for a while, then said, are there any restaurants nearby? Yes. Go out of this alley, turn right, enter the street, then go straight about 500 or 600 meters away. There's a restaurant called Purple Cloud Restaurant. The purple-clothed young man thought and said, okay. Yan Wei and I will go to Purple Cloud Restaurant first. You go and call the messenger of the Central Tower. Qin Feiyang said. The purple-clothed young man said, is it necessary? Can't we just go and find him? I have other things to do. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he took out 2 illusory form pills. He threw one to Yan Wei and swallowed the other. Just like before, Yan Wei disguised as an old man. Qin Feiyang disguised as a blue-haired young man. Qin Feiyang looked at the purple-clothed young man and said, go, after this matter is settled, I will remove your slave seal. Really? The purple-clothed young man was stunned and quickly asked, I always keep my word. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, took Yan Wei, and strode to the end of the alley. Finally, I'm going to regain my freedom. The purple-clothed young man was ecstatic and quickly turned and ran to the square. About a few hundred breaths later, Qin Feiyang and the purple-clothed young man came to the entrance of the Purple Cloud Restaurant. At the door stood 2 waiters. Seeing Qin Feiyang and the purple-clothed young man stop in front of the door, one of the waiters immediately ran up and said with a flattering smile, 2 guests, do you want to drink or stay? Let's drink a little, and arrange a slightly more secluded room for me. Qin Feiyang smiled. Okay, please come in. Under the waiter's guidance, the 2 entered the Purple Cloud Restaurant. In the hall, there were not many guests, sitting in 2s and 3s, drinking and chatting. As for Qin Feiyang's arrival, these people only glanced at him hurriedly, and then looked away. Of course, if Qin Feiyang did not change his appearance, it would definitely be a different scene. Young master, the secluded room is on the 4th floor, follow me. The waiter called out, went straight up the stairs and ran up. Everything went smoothly. But just as the 3 of them walked up to the 4th floor, the door of a room suddenly opened. Then an old man in white walked out. This person had white hair and a white beard, and his white clothes were spotless. He looked like an immortal and had an extraordinary temperament. Seeing this old man, Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted, and deep disbelief crept up in his eyes. After the old man closed the door of the room, he walked towards Qin Feiyang and the other 2. It seemed that he was going downstairs. When they met, the waiter bowed and said, hello, senior. Yes. The old man in white nodded, glanced at Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei, and walked straight past the 3 of them. And from the beginning to the end, Qin Feiyang lowered his head, as if he was very afraid of this old man. But suddenly, the old man in white who had already passed by stopped, turned around and stared at Qin Feiyang's back, and a trace of doubt crept up in his old eyes. And Qin Feiyang could clearly sense that the old man in white was staring at him. On his forehead, there were already beads of sweat the size of beans. It could be seen how nervous he was at this moment. After a few breaths, the waiter passed through a corridor, stopped in front of a room, and said with a smile, young master, this is your room. Yes. Qin Feiyang pretended to be calm, nodded, and strode into the room. The decoration inside was quite luxurious. The floor was covered with snow-white jade, and there was not a speck of dust. All kinds of decorations were also carved with colored glass, jade, and precious beads. And when Yen Wei and the waiter entered the room one after another, the old man in white withdrew his gaze. Why does it feel a little familiar? Illusion. The old man in white muttered to himself, with a trace of doubt, turned and went downstairs. In the room, the waiter greeted Qin Feiyang and the other two, entered the tea room, and said with a flattering smile, "Young master, what do you want to order?" However, Qin Feiyang seemed not to hear. He sat by the tea table, lowered his head, and frowned tightly. Seeing this, the waiter looked at Yen Wei suspiciously. Yen Wei looked at Qin Feiyang, his eyes full of doubts, and said to the waiter, "Anything is fine, you arrange it." Okay. Chapter 845. What's wrong with you? Yen Wei retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang with concern. Qin Feiyang said, "Did you notice the old man in white we met earlier?" "Yes. That person didn't have the slightest aura of cultivation, but I could smell a dangerous aura from him." "Why? You know him?" Yen Wei asked. "Not only do I know him, but even if he turned into a skeleton, I would still recognize him," Qin Feiyang said, his eyes flashing with a shocking light. "Who?" Yen Wei was surprised. "The Grand Preceptor of the Great Qin Empire, and also my father's teacher. It is said that he has already stepped into the false god realm," Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. "What?" Yen Wei's expression changed and he said in shock, "Doesn't that mean that he is only half a step away from becoming a war god?" Qin Feiyang nodded. This. Yen Wei couldn't believe it to the extreme. "That's not right. Since he's your father's master, then your family. But looking at you, why do you seem to hate him?" Yen Wei didn't understand. "Not only do I hate him, but I also want to pull out his tendons, peel his skin, and drink his blood." Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth, and his expression was unprecedentedly ferocious. Yen Wei was curious, but Qin Feiyang suddenly stopped talking and pulled Fatso out. As soon as Fatso appeared, he asked, "Boss, are you seeing things? Is it really him?" "It's really him. Let's not talk about this for now. You and Yen Wei go to the market immediately, and buy as many medicinal materials for the battle chi pill as possible," Qin Feiyang said. "Okay. You be careful too." Fatty nodded and reminded Yen Wei worriedly. Then he turned around and walked out of the private room with Yen Wei. After closing the door, Yen Wei turned to look at Fatty and thought to himself, "What's going on?" "It's a long story, and it has always been a pain in Boss's heart. Let's go, I'll tell you slowly on the way." Fatso sighed and walked down the stairs. Inside the room, Qin Feiyang lowered his head. His heart was in a mess. Last time when the general of the Iron Black Army ambushed him, although he didn't succeed in killing him, he must have thought that he died in the ice lake. Logically speaking, after hearing of his death, the Grand Preceptor should not come to the Forgotten Continent. But why would this old thing appear in Ice Crystal City? Is it to stop him? Or is there some other reason? But now, the Grand Preceptor must have known he was not dead. Once he appeared, he would definitely be hunted down by the Imperial Tutor. Coupled with the unfathomable Mu family, the situation was getting worse and worse. After a moment, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." Qin Feiyang calmed himself down and looked at the door. The door was pushed open, and the waiter came in with a few dishes and 2 jugs of wine. Qin Feiyang said, "Put it on the table." "Okay." The waiter walked to the table and neatly placed it on the table. Qin Feiyang said again, "If someone is looking for me, there's no need to report, just tell them to come up." "Understood." The waiter nodded and smiled, then turned around and prepared to leave. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang stretched out his hand and said, "Wait." The waiter was startled and asked, "Young master, do you have any other orders?" Qin Feiyang said calmly, "When I went upstairs, I met that old man in white. Are you familiar with him?" "Not familiar. But that old senior is usually very kind." The waiter laughed. "Kind?" Qin Feiyang secretly sneered and asked, Then when did he come to the Purple Cloud House? It seems to be half a month ago. The waiter thought for a moment and said, half a month ago. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, took out a scarlet-colored glass pill, placed it on the tea table, and said with a faint smile, take this, don't tell him, I asked you about him. Okay. The waiter's eyes lit up, and he quickly ran up to grab the Spirit Sea pill, and then ran out happily. This scarlet-colored glass pill only had one pill pattern. That waiter was a 3-star war emperor, so he was useless to him. But he could sell it at the exchange. For a waiter in a restaurant, this could be considered a considerable income. Qin Feiyang was silent for a moment, rubbed his swollen head and sighed. It seems that I have to be more careful in the future. Then he stood up, walked to the table, grabbed a wine cup, sat at the table, and poured himself a drink. Time passed breath by breath. About 100 breaths. Dong. Another knock on the door sounded. Is he here? Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, put down the wine cup, and said, please come in. Before his voice died away, the door was pushed open, and an old man and a young man walked into the room. The young man was the purple-clothed young man. The old man was the white-haired old man who was guarding the altar. Qin Feiyang, this is the divine messenger of the main pagoda. My lord, this person is Qin Feiyang. The purple-clothed young man closed the door, introduced both sides, and then stepped aside, silently looking at the two. Are you really Qin Feiyang? The white-haired old man looked at Qin Feiyang. Yes, I am. Qin Feiyang took out a facial restoration pill and threw it into his mouth, and soon his face was restored. The moment he restored his face, the white-haired old man's eyes shone with a cold light. Don't you know that the pill pagoda is looking for you? He said in a deep voice. Of course I know. Otherwise I wouldn't be hiding. Qin Feiyang smiled. The white-haired old man frowned. Then why did you take the initiative to look for me? Qin Feiyang was taken aback, and looked at the purple-clothed young man suspiciously. The purple-clothed young man said, this has nothing to do with me, and I didn't say anything. I only told him that you were here. Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at the white-haired old man again, and said with a faint smile, if I don't do anything wrong, I'm not afraid of ghosts knocking on my door. Since I dared to look for you, I definitely have the confidence. Please sit. Is there a need to sit? Get up and come with me. As long as you hand over all the alchemy fire, I will help you plead with the main pagoda master, and ask him to be lenient. The white-haired old man said expressionlessly, some things are not as simple as you think. If you don't listen to me, I can guarantee that not only will you regret it in the future, but your main pagoda will also suffer. Qin Feiyang picked up the wine glass, and said lightly while drinking. The white-haired old man raised his eyebrows, walked to the table and sat opposite Qin Feiyang, and said, this old man wants to see how you're going to quibble. Speak. It's not a quibble, it's the truth. Except for the heavenly thunder flame, heavenly ice flame, and heavenly mystic flame, all the alchemy fire is in the hands of the Mu clan. The main pagoda masters of the 5th to 9th districts were also killed by the Mu clan's second ancestor. Also, the first 2 divine envoys who appeared were forced by the Mu clan to self-destruct because they knew the truth. Of course, the main reason why they self-destructed was to help me get out of this predicament. Because I'm the only one in this world who knows the truth. If I die, no one can stop the Mu clan's conspiracy. Qin Feiyang said. You mean, all of this is the Mu clan's plot to frame you? The white-haired old man frowned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Impossible. The Mu clan has always abided by the rules in the Forgotten Continent. They would never do such a thing. Don't think that I'll believe you just because you said those words. Let me tell you, taking the initiative to admit your mistakes is your wisest choice. The white-haired old man sneered. Abiding by the rules? If that's what you think, then you're too naive. I'll tell you clearly, the Mu clan is planning a big conspiracy. I'm not sure what it is exactly. But I'm sure that once their conspiracy succeeds, the Forgotten Continent will fall into chaos. Qin Feiyang said. The white-haired old man raised his eyebrows, angrily said, enough, stop trying to drive a wedge between us. Drive a wedge between us? I'm not interested in that, nor do I have the time. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, Lu Hong appeared out of thin air next to him, said, "Record that conversation, let this confused divine envoy listen to it." The white-haired old man's eyes darkened, said, "Watch your words." Okay. You're not confused, you're smart. Your wisdom is unparalleled. Is that okay? Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand, but there was a hint of ridicule at the corner of his mouth. This guy's guts are too big. The purple-clothed youth standing at the side, just listening to Qin Feiyang's words, couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. One must know, the old man in front of him was not only the divine envoy of the main tower, but also a terrifying war emperor. It was no exaggeration to say that even his father, the leader of one of the top 10 super tribes, had to be respectful. But this guy, not only did he not have the slightest bit of respect, he was even mocking and ridiculing him. Did he really not know how to write the word death? At the same time, Lu Hong also took out the image crystal and slowly merged her battle chi into it. Immediately, the recording of that conversation slowly spread in the pavilion. In this conversation, not only Qin Feiyang and the Mu clan's ancestor, but also the black-clothed middle-aged man, that is, the divine envoy who was going to take Qin Feiyang to the central divine kingdom. Listening to these conversations, the white-haired old man's hands gradually clenched. The purple-clothed youth also had a look of horror. He didn't expect that all of this was really done by the Mu clan. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Don't think that by killing me today, you can hide it from everyone. Let me tell you, your Mu clan will pay the price for this sooner or later. Finally, an even louder voice came out from the image crystal. This was what the divine envoy said to the Mu clan's ancestor before he self-destructed. This Mu clan is too much. After listening to all the conversation, the white-haired old man suddenly stood up. His old eyes burst out with a strong murderous intent. Although at that time we didn't record the image of the divine envoy, but you are all divine envoys of the main tower, you should be able to recognize his voice. Now do you still think that I'm trying to sow discord? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The white-haired old man closed his eyes in pain. A moment later he opened his eyes, looked deeply at Qin Feiyang and sighed. I'm sorry all this time, we have misunderstood you. It's okay. As long as the misunderstanding can be solved. Now tell me, what should I do? Qin Feiyang said. The white-haired old man said without hesitation. We must tell the truth to the master as soon as possible. I will take you to the central divine kingdom immediately. I can't go to the central divine kingdom with you. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Why? You're not innocent. What are you worried about? The white-haired old man frowned. Chapter 846. I'm not afraid. It's just that the Mu family won't let me go to the central divine kingdom. Have you heard of the young master of the Mu family, Mu Qin? Qin Feiyang asked. The white-haired old man nodded. Yes, but I don't know much about him. This person has activated a kind of heaven-defying fighting soul that can see through the origin of all things. All illusions have nowhere to hide. Although he left with serious injuries last time, I have to be careful. What if he's in the crowd outside the Pill Pagoda now? If I show up, won't he know that the misunderstanding between me and the Pill Pagoda has been resolved? Qin Feiyang said. See through the origin of all things? The white-haired old man was shocked and a little incredulous. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, I'm not joking. I've been tricked by him many times because of this fighting soul. So you have a close relationship with the Mu family? The white-haired old man frowned. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly and he sneered. Sooner or later, I'll uproot this family. The white-haired old man was stunned, and then he gave him a thumbs up and smiled. I admire your courage. But the Mu family's strength is something that even the Pill Pagoda is quite afraid of. So I advise you to give up the idea as soon as possible. Since you can't go to the central divine kingdom with me, I'll send a message to the chief pagoda master. As long as he can come to pick us up in person, even if the great ancestor and second ancestor of the Mu family come in person, they won't dare to do anything to you. The white-haired old man said and took out an image crystal. Dong. However, at this time, there was another knock on the door. The white-haired old man was shocked and whispered, You have an appointment with someone else? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head, and his eyes were full of doubts. The waiter of the restaurant? But that's not right. The wine and dishes were already on the table. There was no need for the waiter to come. Who is it? Qin Feiyang asked. Clang. No one answered. However, the door was kicked open by someone. A familiar figure came into Qin Feiyang's sight. Mu Qing. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold. Mu Qing walked into the private room and chuckled. It's been so long since we last met. I thought you had forgotten about me. How could I dare to forget you? Qin Feiyang chuckled and looked past Mu Qing towards the door. Mu Qing shook his head and laughed. He walked to the dining table, leaned against the chair, crossed his legs, and revealed a cynical smile. People who didn't understand Mu Qing would definitely think that he was a good-for-nothing playboy when they saw his current appearance. But Qin Feiyang would never think so. However, this kind of attitude made him very uncomfortable. Mu Qing smiled faintly and said, Don't look anymore. I came alone this time, but, speaking of which. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and there was a trace of mockery in his eyes. But what? Qin Feiyang frowned. In his heart, there was a faint sense of uneasiness. Mu Qing smiled and said, Even if I came alone, you can't go to the Central Divine Kingdom, let alone see the Chief Tower Master. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes slightly. Mu Qing said, Do you want to know why? Qin Feiyang said, If you want to tell me, I'm willing to listen. Mu Qing smiled faintly and said, Then let's do it. Do it. Qin Feiyang was stunned. What did he mean? The next moment, a scream sounded behind him. Qin Feiyang was shocked and quickly turned his head to look. He saw the young man in purple slowly falling to the ground. And on his chest, there was a bloody hole with blood gushing out. What's going on? Qin Feiyang was extremely shocked. Suddenly, he seemed to have discovered something and suddenly looked at the white-haired old man. He saw that the white-haired old man was holding a dagger in his hand. That dagger was still dripping blood. Obviously, the young man in purple was killed by the white-haired old man. But why? Wasn't the white-haired old man the divine envoy of the Pill Tower? Logically speaking, he should be protecting the young man in purple. After all, the young man in purple was also someone who knew the truth now. Dong. Suddenly, there was a fierce knock on the door. Who is it? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Young master, divine envoy, I just heard someone screaming here. Did something happen? Do you need help? The anxious voice of the waiter came from outside. When the young man in purple and the white-haired old man came to the Purple Cloud House, they asked the waiter about Qin Feiyang's private room. So the waiter also knew that the Chief Tower Divine Envoy was in this room now. Mu Qing looked at Qin Feiyang and chuckled. Do you want me to teach you how to say it? A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes, and he said to the door, I have a problem with my cultivation. It's nothing. Go do your work. Okay. If you need anything, just tell me. After the waiter finished speaking, he hurriedly left. Swish. Qin Feiyang immediately retracted his gaze and looked at the white-haired old man. Are you surprised? The white-haired old man laughed. You. Looking at the smile on the old man's face and Mu Qing's playful expression, Qin Feiyang had a terrible idea in his mind. Have you been bought by the Mu family? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Bought? The white-haired old man shook his head with a smile and said, You think too simply. Let me tell you. Mu Qing slammed the table and stood up with a smile. The old man in front of you has two identities. The first identity is the Chief Tower Divine Envoy, and the other identity is my second grandfather. Chief Tower Divine Envoy. Second grandfather? Qin Feiyang's mind was in a mess. It seems too complicated and too sudden. You can't understand it for a while. Then I'll make it simpler. When my second grandfather was young, he had already sneaked into the Pill Tower and became the Chief Tower Divine Envoy step by step. But the senior figures of the Pill Tower still don't know that he is a member of the Mu family. Mu Qing laughed. What? Qin Feiyang's face stiffened. If he still couldn't understand it when it was so straightforward, then he was an idiot. At this moment, he was very bitter in his heart. He thought that this time he could make a comeback and ruin the Mu family's reputation. But he never expected that this white-haired old man was a spy planted by the Mu family in the pill tower. In an instant, he was thrown from heaven to hell. God was too good at teasing people. It's not God who is teasing you, it's me who is teasing you. First I let you see hope, then I immediately let you fall into despair. This feeling is not ordinary. As if seeing through Qin Feiyang's thoughts, Mu Qing smiled faintly. Don't think that you can make me think highly of you by saying this. If it weren't for the force behind you, to be honest, I would have played you to death. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Don't you also have a huge force behind you? How powerful is the son of the great Qin Empire? It's a pity that you can't rely on it. Mu Qing was not angry and retorted. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened and rushed to Mu Qing like lightning. His big hand was like an eagle's claw, grabbing Mu Qing's head. How dare you be so arrogant? The white-haired old man sneered and rushed toward Qin Feiyang with a roar. Let's wait and see. Qin Feiyang snorted and disappeared without a trace in an instant. The white-haired old man raised his eyebrows. Second grandfather, it's okay. Mu Qing waved his hand and smiled. Such a good opportunity and let him slip away. How can it be okay? The white-haired old man was a little displeased. If that's the case, you're underestimating him. If the pressure could keep him, he wouldn't have been able to escape from the hands of the great ancestor and second ancestor so many times. Mu Qing said. The white-haired old man said gloomily. It's all because of that damn woman. Wrong. Even without that woman, he has a certain life-saving method. Don't forget that the two great ancestors said that he could get the demon dragon's eye and heart, because of the castle and the dagger called Chang Shui. I'm now suspecting that the castle and Chang Shui may be divine artifacts comparable to the space-time gate. They can't be underestimated. Moreover, this time, I didn't think of capturing him alive. I just wanted to see his angry expression, and the result didn't disappoint me. Mu Qing said with a smile. Divine artifacts comparable to the space-time gate. The white-haired old man's pupils shrank. At the same time, in the castle, Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy to the extreme. No matter how Mu Qing schemed against him, he didn't care. At most, he would find an opportunity in the future to scheme back. But Mu Qing's last words had touched his bottom line. That's right. He was the son of an emperor. Counting it, he did have a huge force behind him. Although he was unreliable, he had never complained, nor did he expect any help. Because he believed. With his own ability and the group of friends around him who treated him with sincerity, he could still make a name for himself. Logically speaking, he didn't have to be so angry because of Mu Qing's words. But Mu Qing's words had another meaning. He was an abandoned person, and this had always been a pain in his heart. In other words, Mu Qing's previous words were like a dagger fiercely stabbing into his heart, making his injury worse. And this injury was not a physical injury, but a mental and spiritual one. This kind of injury was countless times crueler and more painful than a physical injury. Little Qinzi, don't be like this. Yes, although you have lost a lot, you still have us. Although we are not qualified to be your backers, as long as you say the word, no matter where you go, we will not hesitate to go. Wolf King Lu Hong, the double-winged snow eagle, the pangolin, and the black dragon snake were all comforting him in a low voice. Because they knew Qin Feiyang too well. They could clearly feel Qin Feiyang's mood at the moment. Suddenly, Wolf King seemed to think of something and said, Little Hong, quickly send a message to Fatso and Yanwei and tell them not to come back. Yes. Fatso and Yanwei are still outside. Qin Feiyang quivered. Before Lu Hong took out the image crystal, he took the initiative to take it out. Because Fatso and Yanwei were still unaware. If they ran back at this time, wouldn't they bump into Mu Qing and Yanwei? Qin Feiyang, come out. Let's talk. Of course, if you don't care about the lives of Fatso and Yanwei, I don't care either. But at this moment, Mu Qing's voice came into the castle. What? Have Fatso and Yanwei fallen into their hands? Lu Hong, Wolf King, and the other beasts suddenly changed color. Boom. Chapter 847. Shua. Inside the pavilion. Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air in front of Mu Qing and the white-haired old man, and said gloomily, "If you dare to hurt them, I guarantee that you will regret it." "Impudent!" The white-haired old man shouted coldly and immediately released his emperor's might, imprisoning Qin Feiyang. Mu Qing smiled faintly and waved his hand. "Second, Grandpa, there's no need." The white-haired old man raised his eyebrows and retracted his pressure. Then, Mu Qing looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "You can rest assured, the two of them are still very safe." "What exactly do you want to do?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "It's very simple. Use the conversation record in your hands to exchange for the two of them," Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Isn't your Mu family very strong? You think you're invincible. What's there to be afraid of with a mere conversation record?" Sigh. Mu Qing sighed deeply and said, "Brother Qin, why do you have to do this? Actually, there's no need for us to make such a fuss." "Are you blaming me?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "Why can't you listen? Yes, I admit that I tricked you into coming to the Forgotten Continent with a purpose. But I really have no intention of hurting you. As long as you can follow the script we wrote for you, I guarantee that not only will you be able to escape unscathed in the future, my Mu family will also help you take revenge." Mu Qing said sincerely, "If I follow the script you wrote, what kind of person do you think I, Qin Feiyang, am? Furthermore, if I, Qin Feiyang, want to take revenge, do I need your help?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "Brother Qin, don't say that too early. Although you are the son of the emperor, you may not be as clear as me about the foundation of the great Qin Empire. I can tell you that the experts hiding in the imperial capital are no less than those on the Forgotten Continent. You should know that the imperial tutor has trained a group of death warriors. These people are basically all combat emperors. It's just that I've never appeared in front of anyone before, so not many people know about it," Mu Qing said. "Death warriors." Qin Feiyang felt a chill in his heart. Mu Qing added, "That's all I can tell you now. Think about it." Qin Feiyang gloomily glanced at the two of them. He suddenly waved his hand and Lu Hong appeared out of thin air. He said, "Destroy the records of that conversation." "All right." Lu Hong nodded and took out the image crystal. "No." Mu Qing extended her hand and shook her head. "I'm not going to destroy the records of the conversation. I'm going to destroy all of your image crystals. Don't go too far," Qin Feiyang said angrily. "Brother Qin, you can't blame me for this. You can only blame yourself for being too smart. I had no choice but to guard against you. What if you have something up your sleeve? Therefore, only by destroying the image crystal can we completely eliminate all future troubles." Mu Qing smiled. "All right, I'll do as you wish," Qin Feiyang said word by word. He took out his image crystal first and squeezed it hard with his big hand. With a crack, the image crystal instantly shattered. Lu Hong also crushed the image crystal. Mu Qing nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, "There's also Wolf King, Black Dragon Snake, and Double-Winged Snow Eagle." Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "Double-Winged Snow Eagle and Double-Winged Snow Snake don't have image crystals." "No." Mu Qing was surprised. After thinking for a while, she nodded and said, "All right, I believe you. Then call Wolf King out." Qin Feiyang waved his hand again, and Wolf King appeared out of thin air. "Long time no see." Mu Qing greeted him warmly. "What's up? You miss me?" "Good, I miss you too. Let's make out," Wolf King teased. "Make out?" Mu Qing's face twitched and she said helplessly, "Forget it. If you bite me when I'm not careful, won't I lose a lot?" "How dare you?" Wolf King smiled disdainfully and took out the image crystal from his energy reserve. He threw it on the ground and crushed it with his foot. "Brother Wolf is really straightforward." Mu Qing gave him a thumbs up and laughed. "Then you have to remember that the enmity between us is irreconcilable," Wolf King said, his eyes flashing with a terrifying ferocious light. "I understand." Mu Qing nodded and smiled. Then she sat at the table and said, "Now that this matter is settled, let's talk about the future cooperation." "Cooperation?" Qin Feiyang, Lu Hong, and Wolf King looked at each other with a trace of mockery in their eyes. Now their relationship with Mu Qing had reached the point where it was either you die or I die. Was there still a possibility of cooperation? I know what you are thinking, but don't you want to know the secret of the heavenly thunder fire? Mu Qing smiled faintly. Secret? Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed and he said, You two go to the ancient castle first. I will be outside alone. Lu Hong and Wolf King nodded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent them to the ancient castle. Then he sat opposite Mu Qing and sneered, finally willing to talk. The time has come. Mu Qing smiled faintly. She picked up a wine cup and slowly tasted it. Then she looked at Qin Feiyang and said, In the Forgotten Continent, there is a very ancient legend. It is said that a miracle is hidden in a certain place. In the miracle there are countless treasures. For example, elixir fire, elixir recipes, medicinal herbs, all kinds of divine weapons and battle arts. Some people even say that there are divine arts, divine weapons and divine elixirs. Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang's face froze. Was there really such a place? At first, we also doubted it. But according to our investigation, this miracle does exist. Because the previous chief pagoda master went to this divine ruin. And she got a lot of treasures. It is said that she got hundreds of perfect battle arts. Mu Qing said. Hundreds? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. He couldn't believe it and asked. Even if this miracle exists, what does it have to do with those elixir fires? Because only those elixir fires can summon the miracle. Similarly, these elixir fires are the key to opening the miracle. Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. No wonder the nether demonic flame couldn't devour those elixir fires. It turned out that there was a hidden meaning. Suddenly, he frowned and said, Does the Pill Pagoda know? Of course. And from ancient times to now, these elixir fires have been preserved by the Pill Pagoda. Of course, not everyone in the Pill Pagoda knows this secret. Only the highest power of the Pill Pagoda, such as the previous Chief Tower Master, the Deputy Chief Tower Master, and the elders know. Mu Qing said. That's strange. Since they know, why did they put such important things in the branches of the 9 regions? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. That's why they are smart. Because in our opinion, such important things must be hidden in the Chief Tower. But it's the exact opposite. They're placed in the various branch towers. Can you imagine this? I'm sure that you never thought of it. Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang nodded. If he hadn't heard Mu Qing say it, he wouldn't have thought that these elixir fires would be so important. In fact, the people of the Pill Pagoda are playing psychological warfare. The more important something is, the more dangerous it is to be put in. Isn't there an old saying? The more dangerous the place, the safer it is. Furthermore, the current names of those flames are not their true names. For example, the heavenly thunder flame is called the Purple Thunder Divine Fire. Mu Qing said with a smile. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Then how did your Mu family find it? It's not easy. Maybe you don't know, my Mu family is not from the Forgotten Continent. Mu Qing said. I know. Qin Feiyang said. You know? Mu Qing was slightly stunned. Then she shook her head and said, You are indeed a scary guy. Qin Feiyang frowned and said expressionlessly, I don't want to listen to nonsense, continue. Okay, I'll continue. My Mu family moved to the Forgotten Continent more than 10,000 years ago. Of course, we have been secretly investigating since we received the news. Do you know how long we have been investigating? It's been 10,000 years, until a few years ago. We found out that the alchemy fire of the various branches is the key to opening the miracle. Mu Qing sighed. Qin Feiyang said, Then where is your Mu family originally from? This, Mu Qing hesitated and shook her head. I can't tell you for now, let's talk about cooperation. I believe you are interested in this miracle. Yes. I am interested. But why should I cooperate with your Mu family? Qin Feiyang said. You must cooperate with us. Because there are a total of 10 flames to open the miracle. Except for the heavenly thunder flame, the ice flame and the mysterious sky flame, the other 6 are in my hands. If you are not willing to cooperate, then don't think about entering the miracle. Of course, you might say that you can cooperate with the Pill Tower and let them come to my Mu family and take away those flames. But unfortunately, you don't have any evidence now. The Pill Tower people will not believe you, let alone help you. On the contrary, if we cooperate, with your brain and the strength of my Mu family, it will be easy to take away the last flame. And the last flame is called the Heavenly Star Flame, and it is now in the main tower. Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and asked, "Do you know the exact location?" "Of course I know. My second grandpa is now the oracle of the main tower. It is very easy for him to find out the location of the Heavenly Star Flame." Mu Qing smiled confidently. The white-haired old man said, "If you are willing to cooperate with us, this old man can help you forge an identity and sneak into the main tower." Qin Feiyang looked at the white-haired old man, then looked at Mu Qing and lowered his head. Frankly speaking, he was really interested in this miracle. Because now the enemies he encountered were getting stronger and stronger, he must improve his strength as soon as possible. The most important thing was, his mother was now imprisoned in the divine prison of the imperial capital. The divine prison was located in the back mountain of the imperial palace, and there were countless strong people guarding it, including the state preceptor. If he was not strong enough, let alone rescuing his mother, it would be a problem whether he could even enter the back mountain. Chapter 848. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't speak for a long time, Mu Qing smiled and said, "Brother Qin, there's nothing to worry about, right?" Qin Feiyang looked up at him, his brows tightly knitted into a line. "You and I both know the current situation. If you don't cooperate with me, you won't even be able to enter the central divine kingdom, let alone the divine ruins. On the contrary, if we cooperate, we will succeed." Mu Qing said. Qin Feiyang said, "If I agree, will your Mu family still come to trouble me?" "Of course not. I can guarantee that before entering the divine ruins, my Mu family will not hinder you from doing anything." Mu Qing said. "Phew." Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, let's cooperate, but I have two conditions." "There are still conditions? Do you know your current situation?" The white-haired old man frowned. "Second grandpa, don't be impatient. That's because he's that sort of person. If he wasn't like that, I would instead suspect if he was really Qin Feiyang." After Mu Qing finished speaking, he looked at Qin Feiyang, waiting for Qin Feiyang to continue. Qin Feiyang said, "First, after the matter is done, release the fire qilin." Mu Qing was taken aback and said, "Speaking of the fire qilin, I have a question to ask. Why is it so good to you?" Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly, "This is none of your business, can you do it?" "This?" Mu Qing hesitated for a moment and shook his head. "No, unless you exchange the heart of the demon dragon and the eye of the demon dragon." Qin Feiyang frowned. To be honest, he had a very special feeling for the fire qilin, as if it was his former partner. If it was really possible, he was willing to exchange the heart of the demon dragon and the eye of the demon dragon. But the key was that even he didn't know where the heart of the demon dragon and the eye of the demon dragon were. Don't misunderstand. I'm not threatening you now. After all, you can't have your cake and eat it. You want me to hand over the fire qilin, so you have to give me some compensation, right? Mu Qing smiled. All right. When we come out of the divine sight, we will make the exchange face to face. Qin Feiyang nodded. Although the devil dragon's heart and devil dragon's eye had disappeared, Mu Qing did not know about it. He could use this point to stall for time. At least this way, he could temporarily ensure the fire qilin's safety. Mu Qing said, "Sure, tell me the second condition." "I need your help. Help me become the Tower Master's personal disciple," Qin Feiyang said. "What? Who do you think you are? He even wants to become the Chief Pagoda Master's disciple. Furthermore, the Chief Pagoda Master has never accepted a personal disciple since he took over the position. Don't even think about it." The white-haired old man mocked, his face full of disdain. Mu Qing remained silent, staring at Qin Feiyang, as if trying to see through him. "Don't talk nonsense with me. You must agree to this condition. Otherwise, our cooperation will end here. Don't always think of threatening me." Actually, I also have the capital to threaten you. My capital is the heavenly thunder flame, the cold ice flame, and the sky profound flame. Without these three flames, even if you snatch the heavenly dipper flame, you won't be able to summon the divine sight. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. You're courting death. The white-haired old man's eyes suddenly burst out with a strong cold light. However. Mu Qing laughed and said, This is the Qin Feiyang I know. The white-haired old man said, Qing, don't spoil him, otherwise he will definitely take advantage of you. Second grandfather, don't worry, he won't. Mu Qing waved his hand, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said, I'm very curious, why do you want to become the direct disciple of the chief pagoda master? Qin Feiyang said, I'm also curious, what is your relationship with Lu Xingqian? Are you willing to tell me? No. Mu Qing shook his head. Qin Feiyang said, That's right, we all have our own secrets, why should we expose them? That makes sense. Mu Qing pondered for a while, turned to look at the white-haired old man, and said, Second grandfather, do you know the chief pagoda master's habits? He rarely appears, so I don't know much about him. But it is said that he is a bit of a loner and unreasonable. I'm afraid we can't help him become the chief pagoda master's disciple. The white-haired old man said. Mu Qing nodded, looked at Qin Feiyang again and said, We can at most help you, whether you succeed or not depends on your ability. Okay. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and nodded. Mu Qing immediately raised his wine glass and said with a smile, Then I wish us a happy cooperation. Qin Feiyang didn't bother to talk to him and said, When are we going to the Central Divine Kingdom? Mu Qing was quite embarrassed. He put down his wine glass, got up and said, Since Brother Qin can't wait, let's go now. Not now, I have to wait for Fatso and the others to come back. Qin Feiyang said, and then pointed to the purple-clothed young man lying in a pool of blood and said, And what should we do with him? That's easy. Just say that he was killed by Qin Feiyang. Mu Qing said with a smile. Qin Feiyang's eyes suddenly became cold. Did I say something wrong? I don't think so. Anyway, you will change your name when you enter the Central Divine Kingdom. Even if you stand in front of the gate of the Qilin tribe, they might not be able to recognize you. What are you afraid of? All right, you wait patiently. We'll wait for you at the teleportation altar. Mu Qing smiled and left with the white-haired old man. After Qin Feiyang watched the two of them leave, he turned around and stared at the purple-clothed youth's corpse. Suddenly, with a wave of his hand, a red sword chi appeared and pounced towards the purple-clothed youth, destroying the corpse. He had figured it out. In any case, he had already carried so many scapegoats, so it didn't matter if he carried one more. Next, he walked into the tea room and lowered his head in thought. The reason why he proposed the condition of becoming the chief pagoda master's disciple was entirely because of the mysterious lady. The mysterious lady wanted him to snatch the five-colored spar, which gave him a headache, because it was almost impossible for the five-colored spar to be with the chief pagoda master. But if he could become his disciple and gain his trust, the chances would undoubtedly be much higher. About an hour passed. Fatso and Yan Wei finally returned. Qin Feiyang looked up at the two of them and asked with a smile, How was the harvest? Full of rewards. Not only did we buy more than 5 million sets of medicinal ingredients for the battle chi pill, but we also got a lot of medicinal ingredients that were 10,000 years old. Fatso laughed. Yan Wei followed. But we found that someone seemed to be following us. I don't know if it's an illusion or not. It's not an illusion, Qin Feiyang said. What do you mean? Fatso and Mu Qing were surprised. The people following you are from the Mu clan. Qin Feiyang explained what had happened in a simple and clear manner. Hearing it, the two of them couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. If before Qin Feiyang and Mu Qing had a falling out, wouldn't they be in danger? Qin Feiyang rubbed his head and sighed. The Mu clan is actually not terrible. The one who is really terrible is Mu Qing. Yes. His omniscient eye is too heaven-defying. No matter how we disguise, he can see through it. Yan Wei said helplessly. Qin Feiyang said. That's why I chose to cooperate with him. It's good to cooperate. At least during this time, You can relax. Fatso didn't refute it. It's not that he's afraid of the Mu clan. Since entering the Forgotten Continent, Qin Feiyang has been entangled with the Mu clan and the mysterious lady. Just looking at it made him feel tired, let alone Qin Feiyang, who was involved in it. So, he wanted to let Qin Feiyang have a good rest. Then let's go. The Central Divine Kingdom. I'd like to see what kind of dragon's pool and tiger's den this place is. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he led the two of them out of the pavilion and walked towards the stairs. When they passed by the state preceptor's door, Fatso frowned and said, "Don't you want to investigate him?" "We can't. Because once we investigate, it's very likely that we'll expose ourselves and attract his attention." Yin Wei was the first to speak. On the way to buy the herbs, Fatso had already told Yin Wei about Qin Feiyang. He sympathized with Qin Feiyang's experience. Because of this, he also learned about Qin Feiyang's other side. It wasn't easy for this young man to come this far. Fatso glanced at Yin Wei and secretly said to Qin Feiyang. What Yin Wei said, Fat Lord can also think of it. But this old thing is too dangerous, we can't leave him alone. I know. But Yin Wei is right, we can't alert him. Let's just pretend that we didn't meet him. Moreover, if he really came for me, then if he couldn't find me in the 9 regions, he would definitely go to the Central Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Fatso nodded helplessly. When they came to the first floor, Fatso paid the bill, and the three of them walked out. But as soon as they walked to the door, Qin Feiyang saw the state preceptor also walking toward the restaurant. Don't do anything rash. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank and he lowered his head, secretly warning Fatso. He was very relieved about Yin Wei. However, Fatty had a mischievous personality. No one knew what he would do. Don't worry, Fat Lord knows what to do. Fatty replied in his mind, but his eyes were rolling around in their sockets. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he ran to the counter and said to the waiter inside, "Give me a pot of wine." Okay. There was a wine cabinet behind the waiter, on which there were large and small wine pots. These wine jugs were all made of top-grade jade. The waiter turned around, reached out and grabbed a wine pot the size of an adult's palm, and placed it in front of Fatso. After the fatty paid the bill, he eagerly ran behind Qin Feiyang and his companion. Then he opened the wine jug and began to drink leisurely. What do you want? Qin Feiyang frowned. I'm suddenly thirsty, I want to drink. Fatso laughed. I'm warning you, if you dare to do anything, don't think about coming out of the castle in the future. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. I say, you're so annoying. Why do you care if I drink some wine? The fatty furrowed his brows, looking very displeased. Qin Feiyang frowned and didn't say anything more. He turned around and walked out of the door with his head lowered. Because at this moment, the state preceptor had also arrived at the door. The two of them passed by just like that. Yin Wei didn't look at the state preceptor, and he was also quite nervous. However, Fatso didn't feel nervous at all. He held the wine pot, swaggered, and glanced at the state preceptor from time to time. Ouch! Just as the two of them brushed past each other, the fatty suddenly let out a howl and staggered forward, falling forward. And the wine pot in his hand, whether it was intentional or coincidental, flew up and hit the state preceptor's head. Chapter 849. In an instant, the place fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at Fatso and the Grand Preceptor, including Qin Feiyang and Yin Wei. Similarly, the Grand Preceptor was also a little stunned by this sudden sneak attack. The first one to react was the waiter of the Purple Cloud House. He quickly grabbed a clean towel from the counter and ran to the Grand Preceptor. Senior, this young man definitely didn't do it on purpose. Please don't be angry. He smiled apologetically as he wiped the wine off the Grand Preceptor. The other waiter immediately ran up to apologize. Although this matter was done by Fatso and had nothing to do with them, they were all guests of the Purple Cloud House after all. They couldn't offend them. Moreover, they didn't want to see guests fighting in the Purple Cloud House. The Grand Preceptor also came back to his senses and turned to look at Fatso. His eyes darkened slightly. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and secretly said to Yin Wei, "Let's go. Pretend that we don't know him." After saying that, he left without looking back. Yanwei shook his head and laughed. He inadvertently glanced at Fatso with a meaningful look in his eyes. It meant, you're on your own. After that, Yanwei chased after Qin Feiyang with large strides. Fatso's face instantly turned green. He actually left him alone and slipped away. That was too much. He rolled his eyes and turned to look at the waiter of the Purple Cloud House. He said angrily, "What's wrong with the Purple Cloud House? Why did you set such a high threshold?" The waiter was a little confused. "Didn't you see? Earlier, it was this doorstep that tripped this young master and implicated this old senior. You all did this on purpose, didn't you?" Fatso roared with a gloomy face. Yes. It's our fault. We'll tear down this threshold later. Please don't be angry. The waiter looked at each other and smiled apologetically. Forget it. I'll just consider myself unlucky today. Fatso waved his hand impatiently and turned to look at the state preceptor. He smiled apologetically and said, "Old senior, I'm really sorry about your clothes. Why don't I go buy you a new set of clothes?" "No need," the imperial preceptor said gloomily. He then turned around and walked upstairs with an ugly expression. Hee. Fatso snickered inwardly. He took out a qiankuan bag from his bosom and tossed it to the shop assistants. Then he turned around and chased after Qin Feiyang and his companion. One of the shop assistants reached out to grab the qiankuan bag and cast a suspicious glance at Fatso's back. Then he immersed his consciousness into the qiankuan bag and was dumbfounded on the spot. "What happened?" the other guys asked curiously. The shop assistant muttered, "It's full of gold coins, at least a few million." "A few million? Why is he giving us so many gold coins? Is it a tip?" The group of shop assistants were dumbfounded, their minds filled with confusion. "Boss, wait for me." On the streets, there was an endless stream of people and carriages. In the crowd, Fatso shouted as he chased after Qin Feiyang and his companion. When Fatso caught up, Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "Don't you think you're childish?" "Childish?" Fatso was stunned. "Nonsense. The wine is bought with money. Isn't it a waste to splash it on him? If you really want to embarrass him in public, splash him with foot-washing water." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, Fatso was stunned. So the boss wasn't angry with him, but was worried about the money? He quickly smiled and said, Okay. Next time, I'll definitely splash him with foot-washing water. Don't use foot-washing water either. I'll tell you a good way. The next time you meet him, you can directly splash floral water on his face in front of everyone. Qin Feiyang's face darkened as he said, "What's floral water?" Yanwei asked curiously. "Saliva." Qin Feiyang's face darkened. The corner of Yanwei's mouth twitched fiercely. Fatso was very embarrassed. It turned out that the boss wasn't worried about the money, but was really angry with him. Boss, I was wrong. Don't be angry, okay?" He hugged Qin Feiyang's arm and said coquettishly, "Get lost." Qin Feiyang shouted angrily. Goosebumps appeared on his skin. A grown man acting coquettishly? How disgusting. Those who didn't know might misunderstand that there was something wrong with his sexual orientation. Yanwei smiled at the side and didn't say anything. Although he was forced to follow Qin Feiyang, after spending some time together, he found that this group of kids was quite interesting. A moment later, the three of them came to the square. Because the three of them had changed their faces, no one knew that they were the wanted targets of the Pill Pagoda. But in the square, they only saw Mu Qing's second grandpa and didn't see Mu Qing. But next to the white-haired old man stood a strange young man. He was about 1.7 meters tall, about 20 years old, skinny as a match, and could be blown away by a gust of wind. His appearance was also very ordinary, wearing old black clothes. In short, this was a very inconspicuous young man. "Stop!" When Qin Feiyang and the other two walked into the square, they were stopped by two black-armored guards. They were the guards of the Ice Crystal City's City Lord Mansion, responsible for assisting the people of the Pill Pagoda. And now, everyone who entered the square had to be interrogated by the Heaven's Eye Stone. "Let them in." But at this time, the white-haired old man said, "Yes." The two guards respectfully responded and retreated to the side. The pedestrians on the street also stopped and looked at the three of them curiously. They didn't accept the interrogation? The three of them must have a powerful background. Qin Feiyang and the other two walked in front of the white-haired old man and bowed. With so many eyes watching, they still had to show the necessary etiquette. The white-haired old man nodded, turned around and waved his hand. Battle Chi surged and quickly opened the teleportation altar. I can't go back now, so you have to go to the Central Divine Kingdom by yourselves. This is my identity token. When you arrive at the Pill Pagoda, give this token to the Deacon Elder, he will arrange a place for you. The white-haired old man took out a palm-sized token and handed it to Qin Feiyang, secretly sending a message. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and took the token. The token was pure gold, with a flame pattern engraved on the front and a name on the back. Lu Xingfeng. Obviously. This was the white-haired old man's name, but it must be a fake name. As for the white-haired old man's real name, Qin Feiyang didn't bother to ask. He took Fatso and Yan Wei and directly stepped onto the teleportation altar. Be careful. Lu Xingfeng looked at the inconspicuous black-clothed young man next to him and secretly warned him. The black-clothed young man nodded, and also stepped onto the teleportation altar, standing next to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was surprised and turned to look at the black-clothed young man. The black-clothed young man grinned and sent a message. Even you didn't notice, that means my disguise was very successful. Qin Feiyang frowned. So this guy was Mu Qing. Wang. The altar glowed brightly, and the four of them quickly disappeared. At the same time, Central Divine Kingdom, Divine City. This city covered an area of a few hundred miles. It was boundless. Tall buildings towered into the sky like precipitous peaks. Every street and alley was filled with people. It was bustling and lively. The most eye-catching place was the central area of the city. That place was located in an ancient building complex. There was an ancient castle. There were tall buildings. There was a palace. There were houses. Among them, there were 10 ancient towers that towered into the sky. From afar, it looked like 10 giants stood in the middle of the city, exuding an unparalleled majestic aura. Although the city was very large, the 10 ancient pagodas could be seen clearly from every corner. They were like kings that attracted the attention of everyone. And right in front of the 10 ancient pagodas, there was a tall stone tablet standing tall. On it, there were 2 grand words carved on it. Pill Tower. There was a flame symbol above it. Whether it was the 2 words Pill Tower or the flame symbol, they all exuded a threatening aura. Under the stone tablet, there was a very big square. In the center, there was also a teleportation altar. Beside the altar, a black-clothed old man sat cross-legged. At this moment, he was looking at the teleportation altar that was glowing brightly. His old eyes exuded a sharp light, and his aura was unfathomable. Suddenly, 4 figures appeared on the altar. It was Qin Feiyang and the other 3. As soon as they appeared, Qin Feiyang, Fatso, and Yan Wei looked around curiously. This was especially true for Yan Wei, who couldn't hide the excitement on his face. He had always yearned to go to the Central Divine Kingdom, but in the past it was limited to yearning. It was basically impossible to enter the Central Divine Kingdom. He even thought that there was no hope of entering the Central Divine Kingdom in this life. But he did not expect to stand on this sacred land at this moment. Therefore, he was very excited at this moment. Hey, can you guys be more promising? Look at you guys now. Are you any different from country bumpkins? Mu Qing looked at the 3 of them helplessly. It's none of your business. Fatso glared at him fiercely. Nonsense, of course it's my business. We're together now. It's embarrassing for you guys to be like this. Mu Qing said unhappily. Fat Lord has a bad temper. Who's with you? Don't get it wrong. You are you, we are us. We have nothing to do with each other. Fatso said angrily. Of course, the 2 of them talked secretly through voice transmission. Who are you guys? The old man in black glanced at the 3 of them, his eyes flashing coldly. Humph, I'm a magnanimous person. I won't argue with you. Mu Qing glanced at Fatso coldly, jumped off the altar, landed on the ground, and bowed respectfully to the old man in black, saying, "Junior Qin Dai greets Senior." Qin Dai? Hearing this name, Qin Feiyang and the other two could not help but be stunned. Fatso said through voice transmission, "Boss, is he indirectly taking advantage of you?" "Taking advantage of me?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at him in confusion. "Think about it. Qin Dai, isn't it Uncle Qin's idea? If it's a little deeper, then it's a real uncle. In other words, he gave you this name, which is tantamount to saying that he's your real uncle." Fatso analyzed seriously. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. This damn Fatso also had a rich imagination, right? I personally think that Fatso's words are reasonable. After all, you see, there are so many surnames in the world. Why did he choose the same surname as you? Chapter 850. Well, Qin Feiyang couldn't find a reason to refute them. Is that really the case? He looked at Mu Qing's back suspiciously, jumped down the altar, and landed beside Mu Qing. Fatso and Yanwei also jumped down and bowed to the old man in black. The old man in black asked, "What are you doing in the central divine kingdom?" "We want to enter the main tower," Mu Qing said, and then winked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang understood, and took out Lu Xingfeng's identity token. After seeing the token, the old man in black's expression eased a lot, and he asked, "Are all of you?" "No. Only me and him." Mu Qing pointed at Qin Feiyang and said, "What about them?" The old man in black looked at Fatso and Yanwei again. Mu Qing coughed dryly and said with a straight face, "They are our servants." Fuck. The fatty's heart was instantly filled with rage. Yanwei was also a little unhappy. "Servants?" The old man in black glanced at the two, and then looked at Mu Qing again and said, "The main tower has a rule that you can't bring servants in." Mu Qing said, "I know. I will settle them down first, and then come to the main tower to sign up." "Then go and settle them down first." The old man in black nodded and then closed his eyes, ignoring the four. "Let's go," Mu Qing whispered to Qin Feiyang and the other two, and then turned and walked to the street on the other side of the square. "What do you mean? It's not enough that you took advantage of my boss, and now you want to take advantage of us." Fatso chased after and said angrily. "Did I?" Mu Qing looked innocent. "Don't pretend. You think we can't see that you named yourself Qin Dai just to take advantage of our boss?" Fatso sneered. Mu Qing was stunned. She shook her head and said, "I just said a name casually. I didn't expect your imagination to be so rich." "But you don't say Qin Dai, my dear grandpa. This name is quite good. Brother Qin, although we're about the same age, if you want to call me grandpa, I won't mind." Mu Qing looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed mockingly. Then she left with a smile on her face. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. This bastard was obviously toying with him. "Boss, why don't you give yourself a better name? This way, you can also be called Mu Dai or Mu Ancestor. At that time, he will have to obediently call you Ancestor." Fatso chuckled. "He's childish, so are you?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. He followed Mu Qing unhurriedly and looked around. The buildings in this area were relatively old. There were traces of time left in every place. On both sides of the square, there were green trees planted. Under the trees, there were patches of flower beds. Hundreds of flowers were blooming and the fragrance assailed the nose. Many young men and women were walking hand in hand in the flower beds. There was a deep love between them. They were wearing the same clothes and there was a flame symbol on their chests. Obviously, they were disciples of the Pill Pagoda, and they were talking about love here. Why? Why are you doing this to me? Haven't I been good enough to you?" Suddenly, a weak cry came into Qin Feiyang's ears. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He stopped and looked in the direction of the sound. Under a big tree on the left, he found a woman in white. She squatted on the ground with her head buried in her hands. Her thin body was trembling and she kept sobbing. She looked particularly helpless and miserable. Seeing Qin Feiyang suddenly stop, Fatso and Yanwei also stopped and looked in the same direction. "She's crying so sadly. She must have been hurt by someone. Fat Lord, go and talk to her." Fatso chuckled and ran over. Mu Qing, who was walking in front, raised her eyebrows and turned to Fatso. She said unhappily, "You even care about this? Do you have nothing better to do? What do you think? Fat Lord is happy to do it." Fatso glanced at him provocatively and ran to the woman in white. He asked with a smile, "Little girl, do you need help?" The woman in white looked up at Fatso and did not say a word. She hurriedly lowered her head again. Fatso said, "Look at you. You must have been abandoned? Get lost." The woman in white suddenly got up and shouted at Fatso. Seems like Fat Lord guessed correctly. Fatty chuckled inwardly and began to seriously size up this woman. He would not know if he did not look, but he was shocked when he did. The woman had a petite figure, fair skin and beautiful looks. She had a pair of big eyes that were crystal clear like black gemstones. Her beautiful black hair was soft and elegant, shimmering with a charming luster. Her snow-white dress made her look like a fairy. Beautiful. Fatso was stunned. What is Fatso doing there? Yanwei was suspicious. Since Fatso's back was facing them, they could not see Fatso's expression at this moment. That woman is quite pretty. Fatso must have fallen in love with her at first sight. Qin Feiyang said half-jokingly. Slap. But before he finished, the woman in white suddenly raised her hand and slapped Fatso's face. Qin Feiyang and Yanwei looked at each other. What was going on? None of you stinky men are good. The white-clothed woman scolded Fatty, then turned around and ran towards the street on the other side. However, Fatso stood there in a daze without any reaction. Qin Feiyang and Yanwei looked at each other and walked over suspiciously. When they saw the fatty's expression, the two of them immediately understood why the woman in white had slapped him. They saw that not only did Fatso show a perverted look, but his eyes were also shining with a burning light. The worst thing was that there was a trace of saliva at the corner of his mouth. With his current appearance, it would be strange if he did not get beaten up. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and patted Fatso's shoulder hard, saying, Hey, it's time to wake up. Boss, Fat Lord has found his true love. Fatso quivered, turned around, grabbed Qin Feiyang's shoulder, and shouted like an excited child. Is it really love at first sight? Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched and he reminded him in a friendly way. She just slapped you. Really? Fatso touched his face. It's hopeless. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He did not even know that he was slapped. How intoxicated must he be? Yanwei's face was also red. He said, She just scolded you and said that you are not a good man. Really? Fatso looked at the two of them suspiciously. Oh my God! Have you gone berserk? Qin Feiyang patted his forehead and looked at the sky speechlessly. Fatso rubbed his head and said with a silly smile. If I can be with her, Fat Lord is willing even if I go mad. In your dreams. A woman who has just been abandoned, no matter who it is, as long as it is a man, she will be disgusted. If you go up to her now, you are simply courting death. Besides, don't forget that you are Fatso who weighs 300 or 400 kilograms. In this world, there are not many women who like Fatso. Mu Qing joked. 300 or 400 kilograms. Fatso's veins suddenly bulged. He rushed to Mu Qing angrily, grabbed Mu Qing's clothes and shouted. Are you blind? Is Fat Lord that fat? At most he is 200 kilograms. 200 kilograms is also very heavy, okay? And didn't you say that the woman is very beautiful? A beautiful woman, she has no shortage of suitors. So you'd better give up as soon as possible. She will never fall for you. Also, don't come so close to me. I am not interested in men. Mu Qing reached out and pushed Fatso away. With a bright smile, she turned and strode forward. Fatso lowered his head and his eyes dimmed. Yanwei frowned and said, This man's words are too hurtful. Isn't he just looking for a sense of superiority? Qin Feiyang sneered and walked to Fatso's side. He said, If you really like her, I will support you unconditionally. Yanwei said with a smile, Don't be discouraged. Although your body shape is a little, well, you are still very kind. I believe that someone will find your inner beauty. Do you know how to comfort people? Fatso glared at Yanwei. Did I say something wrong? Yanwei expressed that he was very innocent. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He patted Fatso's shoulder and said, Okay, there is nothing to be discouraged about. However, don't be too stubborn. Let nature take its course. I know everything is up to fate. Fatso nodded and finally cheered up. Then, Qin Feiyang and the other two followed behind Mu Qing and entered the streets outside the square. They followed the crowd and walked aimlessly. Where are you taking us? Very soon. Fatso became impatient. Mu Qing said with a smile, It is your first time in the Central Divine Kingdom. I have to give you a welcome. Would you be so kind? Not only Fatso was suspicious, Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei were also suspicious. Mu Qing stopped and turned to look at the three of them. He frowned and said, Could it be that in your eyes, I am a two-faced villain? More or less. Fatso pursed his lips. Your words make me bitterly disappointed. I originally wanted to take you to the trading pavilion after drinking some wine. But now it seems that I was not thinking too much. You and Yan Wei find a place to stay. Brother Qin and I will go to the Pill Pagoda to report now. Mu Qing said. Trading pavilion. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other. The trading pavilion of the Divine City is the largest trading place in the Central Divine Kingdom. There are all kinds of rare treasures. I thought you would be interested, but who knew that it was just my wishful thinking? Mu Qing sighed, his face full of helplessness. Of course I am interested. Don't be angry. Fat Lord will apologize to you. Next, we will listen to your arrangements. What do you think? Fatso quickly smiled apologetically. The corner of Mu Qing's mouth twitched fiercely. This speed of change was faster than flipping a book. He said, So it is not my wishful thinking? Definitely not. Fatso said matter-of-factly. Mu Qing said again, Will you really listen to my arrangements? Fatso said angrily, Why are you so long-winded? If I say we will listen to you, we will definitely listen to you. Okay. Then let's go to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion first. Let me tell you, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is the most luxurious restaurant in the Divine City. Those who can enter are basically all famous figures in the Central Divine Kingdom. Of course, it also includes those famous playboys. In short, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is a gathering place for people with power and influence. Naturally, it is also the best place to ask for information. Chapter 851. Dragon Phoenix Tower. This most luxurious restaurant in the city was located next to the central area. It was only a few miles away from the Pill Pagoda. After an hour, Qin Feiyang and the others walked and stopped, and finally arrived at the entrance of the Dragon Phoenix Tower. This restaurant was very tall, very big, and had an ancient feel to it. Above the door, there was a fiery red phoenix, and on the roof, there was a golden divine dragon. Although the golden dragon and phoenix were both carved from stone, they were lifelike, making this Dragon Phoenix Tower look incomparably imposing. At this time it was noon. There was an endless stream of people coming in and out. But without exception, everyone was dressed in gorgeous clothes, exuding an extraordinary aura. For guests, please come in. A waiter ran out and welcomed Qin Feiyang and the other three into the hall. In the hall, there were hundreds of tables neatly arranged. These tables were all made of high-quality jade, and were overflowing with light and color. Even the seats were inlaid with all kinds of gems. The moment they walked into the hall, they could feel a thick and luxurious aura blowing against their faces. Moreover, the business here was very good. It was full of guests, and only a few tables in the corner were empty. There were also rooms upstairs, a total of 10 floors. Of course, the rooms upstairs were all private rooms. However, although it was crowded, it was very quiet. When everyone spoke, they deliberately lowered their voices. At the same time, inside the restaurant, the sound of a zither lingered in the air. The sound of the zither was gentle, and the rhythm was very slow. It was like a small bridge and flowing water, calming one's heart. For guests, this way please. The waiter led Qin Feiyang and the other three to a table in the corner. Mu Qing casually sat on the chair and smiled at the waiter. Give me 4 jars of dragon's wine, and the rest, you can do as you see fit. 4 jars? The waiter's body stiffened, and he hurriedly said, For guests, I think I need to say something. Our dragon's wine. Mu Qing said. I know that dragon's wine is very expensive, but since this young master dares to speak, then I have the ability to pay the bill. All right. The waiter looked at the four of them, turned around, and strode away. Now, whether it was Qin Feiyang and the other two, or Mu Qing, all of them had changed their appearances. Qin Feiyang and the other two were better off. Even though his disguise was more common, he was still very particular about what he was wearing. Clean and tidy. But Mu Qing, wearing old clothes and a frail appearance, he looked like a poor beggar at first glance. It was no wonder that the shop assistant was suspicious. Fatso glanced at the guests around, then looked at Mu Qing and asked in a low voice, "What kind of wine is dragon's wine? How much is it? I'll have to explain it to you." Mu Qing began to narrate excitedly. The Longfeng restaurant was not famous for its delicacies, nor was it famous for its noble atmosphere, but for its wine. The Dragon Phoenix House had a total of 2 kinds of fine wine. First, dragon wine. Secondly, the Phoenix wine. These 2 kinds of wine were brewed by the Longfeng Pavilion using secret recipes. No one else could imitate them at all. However, the price was quite expensive. Dragon's wine and Phoenix's wine, palm-sized wine jars, each cost 1,000,000 gold coins. So expensive? Fatso and Yanwei were dumbfounded. A palm-sized jar of wine cost 1,000,000 gold coins. Wasn't this too ridiculous? Then is there a difference in the taste of these 2 kinds of wine? Fatso asked curiously. Of course. Dragon's wine is exclusive to men. The taste is dry and burning. Drinking it into the stomach is like a ball of fire burning in the heart, making one's blood boil. As for the Phoenix wine, the taste is mellow, sweet, and soft. It is more suitable for women. Mu Qing explained. Men drink dragon's wine. Women drink Phoenix's wine. This Longfeng restaurant really knows how to make gimmicks. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said. He had never been interested in wine. Therefore, no matter what kind of wine it was the same to him. For people like you who don't like to drink, you won't understand the beauty of wine. Mu Qing glanced at him disdainfully, looked at Fatso and Yanwei, and continued. Let me tell you, other than dragon's wine and Phoenix's wine, there is an even more famous wine here. What wine? Fatso and Yanwei's eyes lit up. Dragon's wine. This wine has already surpassed all the good wine in the secular world. It can be called a divine brew. It can even be said that you may not be able to buy it even if you have money, because this Longfeng restaurant only sells 1 jar of dragon's wine every month. Mu Qing said. Divine brew. Fatso and Mu Qing looked at each other. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 of them helplessly. He raised his head and scanned the restaurant, a trace of suspicion creeping into his eyes. The sound of the zither had always been there, but he didn't see the person playing it. Where do you think this Qin Feiyang is hiding? The Mu family and the Pill Pagoda have been looking for him for so long, but they still haven't found him? God knows where he is, but this person really deserves to be killed. Yeah. Slaughtering all the creatures in the first and second areas. His vicious means are simply outrageous. If he dares to enter the central divine kingdom, I will be the first to kill him. You, don't joke, even the Mu family and the Pill Pagoda can't do anything to him, let alone you. Isn't that right? If he doesn't have some means, would he dare to be so arrogant? But the strange thing is, why did he snatch the alchemy fire of the 9 areas? Could it be that there is some secret hidden here? A few young people began to discuss in low voices. Moreover, as soon as this topic was opened, it gradually attracted the attention of his guests. In the end, everyone in the hall was talking about Qin Feiyang. Brother Qin, did you see that? Now you are a big celebrity in the Central Divine Kingdom. Please take care of me in the future. Mu Qing secretly transmitted his voice, not hiding his joking intention. Don't worry. When the truth comes out one day, your Mu family will also become a target of scorn. Everyone will want to beat you up. Qin Feiyang said lightly. I am not in a hurry. I also know that this day will definitely come. But so what? I might as well tell you the truth. When the day comes, no one will dare to challenge the Mu family. Mu Qing laughed. Is that so? Then let's wait and see. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. So what if he is Qin Feiyang? If he dares to come to the central divine kingdom, I, Guoming, will make him kneel and beg for mercy. Suddenly, a proud voice came from above. Everyone looked up and saw a young man in purple strode out from the second floor with a beautiful woman in his arms. This person was about 1.8 meters tall, with long black hair and a contemptuous look in his eyes. There was also a flame symbol on his chest. The woman in his arms was very charming, and her clothes were even more provocative. She was wearing a white silk dress that was almost transparent, revealing her 2 long legs, which was quite seductive. Her chest was also turbulent, as if it was about to burst out. There was also a flame symbol on her chest. Obviously, these 2 people were both disciples of the Pill Pagoda. Guoming? Why does this name sound a little familiar? Mu Qing frowned. Tada. Guoming walked down the stairs slowly with the woman in his arms and came to the hall. And the people in the hall, whether young men or women or rich businessmen, all looked at Guoming with fear in their eyes. Don't always talk about Qin Feiyang as if he is a god. He is just a country bumpkin who only dares to be arrogant in the 9 regions. If you have the ability, let him come to the central divine kingdom, and see how I will teach him a lesson. Guoming stopped in the middle of the hall, glanced at the people around and said disdainfully, "Damn, are you looking for death?" Fatso was furious and suddenly stood up. "Sit down," Qin Feiyang secretly said. Fatso said, "Boss, he despises you so much, can you still tolerate it?" Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold, and said, "Sit down when I tell you to, stop talking nonsense." Fatso raised his eyebrows and went back to his seat helplessly. At this moment, the enchanting woman in Guoming's arms suddenly looked at Fatso, her red lips slightly raised, and said in a coquettish voice, "Brother Ming, that person stood up just now, seems to be a little dissatisfied with you. Looking for trouble?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "Who?" At the same time, Guoming asked. "Him." The enchanting woman pointed at Fatso and said. Guoming raised his head and looked at Fatso, a trace of playfulness crawling up his face. Next, he hugged the enchanting woman and walked to the table of Qin Feiyang and the others. Mu Qing looked at Guoming, and suddenly his eyes flashed, and asked with a smile, "What's the matter?" Guoming looked at Mu Qing with disdain, and looked at Fatso. "I'll give you a chance to say what you wanted to say just now." "All right." Fatso crossed his arms over his chest, leaned on the chair, and said indifferently, "If you're so awesome, why don't you go to the 9 regions to look for Qin Feiyang?" Guoming said arrogantly, "He is not qualified for me to personally go." Fatso teased, "Is it that he is not qualified, or that you do not dare?" Guoming's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a dangerous signal. "Stop pretending. Who can't see through your thoughts? Don't you just want to pretend in front of this woman? I'm very awesome, I'm very arrogant, I'm invincible. If you follow me, I'll guarantee you a good life. Maybe she'll warm your bed at night. Of course, if you want to pretend like this, we won't object, nor do we have the right to object. But let me advise you, don't overdo it." Fatso sneered. "Haha," Mu Qing laughed. And it was a presumptuous laugh, without any concealment. Although the guests in the hall did not laugh out loud, their faces were red. As for Qin Feiyang and Yin Wei, of course, they were also gloating. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Fatso? Wasn't this looking for a beating? On the other hand, Guoming and the enchanting woman's faces were gloomy. "What's wrong? Did I hit the nail on the head and make you angry from embarrassment? Boy, you're still too inexperienced. Go back to your mother's womb to study, then come out and fight with me." Fatso sneered, as if looking at a fly, full of disgust. "How dare you?" The enchanting woman's face turned cold and shouted, "I haven't said anything yet. What are you shouting for? Look at you in public, in front of everyone, wearing so little and hugging a man. Didn't your mother teach you what is etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame? Why don't you just take it all off and let everyone feast their eyes? Anyway, you don't know shame." Chapter 852. Yes, 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 that's right. Mu Qing slapped the table and laughed. Is it so funny? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. As for the others, no one answered. To be exact, no one dared to answer Fatso's words. They just hid aside and snickered. And without a doubt, the enchanting woman was furious. Her delicate body trembled. She held Guoming's arm and said angrily, Brother Ming, he humiliated me. You must help me teach him a lesson. At the same time, Guoming's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He said, Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like this? I don't know, and I'm not interested to know. However, if you are willing to be my grandson, although you are a little useless, I won't mind. Fatso grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. It was very annoying. You're courting death. Guoming's eyes flashed with killing intent. You want to play? Fatso slowly got up. His eyes were also surging with cold light. This time, Qin Feiyang did not stop Fatso. Stop! But at this time, a shout was heard. The waiter who served Qin Feiyang and the other three before rushed over with an exquisite tray. On the tray, there were several plates of delicious food for wine jars, and 4 sets of bowls, chopsticks and wine glasses. After putting the tray on the table, the waiter looked at Guoming and Qin Feiyang and the others. He was puzzled and said, What's going on? Why are you quarreling? Guoming said with a sullen face, I haven't asked you yet. Why did you invite such an uncultured person in? I'm uncultured? Who was the one who was boasting like a dog just now? Fatso laughed angrily. Say it again. Guoming suddenly looked at Fatso. His eyes were cold and piercing. What, did I say something wrong? I think it's too flattering to say that you're a dog. Fatso sneered. Okay, calm down. The waiter quickly smoothed things over. There were so many people eating here. Quarreling would spoil the atmosphere. Guoming said, No, he must kneel down and apologize to me today. Yes, this kind of trash can't be tolerated. The enchanting woman nodded, her face filled with disgust. Pa. But before he could finish his sentence, Fatso swung his hand and slapped the enchanting woman's face. A blood-red palm print immediately appeared. The enchanting woman was stunned. Her face was filled with disbelief. Someone actually dared to hit her? The surrounding people, including the shop assistant, froze. The atmosphere here was extremely solemn. Fatso waved his hand and sneered. I've never hit a woman, but you're asking for it. I can't help it. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. The enchanting woman went completely mad. Giving her a slap in public was no longer a matter of losing face, but a matter of pride. As if she had gone mad, she bared her fangs and brandished her claws at Fatso. You are not only a shameless woman, but also a crazy woman. Fatso's eyes were filled with killing intent. Ayaya, what happened? Why is it so lively? At this time, a strange laughter suddenly sounded. Following closely, a young man, surrounded by a group of young men and women, walked into the Dragon Phoenix house. This person was wearing a white robe that was spotless. His black hair was like a waterfall, his facial features were handsome, his figure was slender, and his entire body was emitting a unique aura. The young men and women who were surrounding this person were also wearing luxurious clothes, and had an extraordinary temperament. He's finally here. Looking at the white-clothed young man, Mu Qing's eyes flashed. But he concealed it very well. Even Qin Feiyang, who was sitting opposite him, did not notice. As soon as the white-clothed young man arrived, he was like a star that was the focus of attention. Everyone's eyes shifted to him. And the originally arrogant and despotic Guoming and the enchanting woman also instantly became obedient. Their expressions were also filled with unconcealable respect and fear. It seems that his background is not small. Qin Feiyang muttered, Young Master Hao, your exclusive private room has been cleaned up for you. Please go upstairs. The waiter who was trying to mediate the fight directly ignored Qin Feiyang's group and Guoming's group. He ran to the white-clothed young man and said with a flattering smile, No need. I can go up by myself. However, I don't want to hear anyone quarreling. The white-clothed young man glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others and said lightly, This humble one understands. This humble one will definitely make good arrangements and not let anyone spoil young Master Hao's mood. The waiter nodded and bowed, as if he was afraid of offending this person. That better be the case. Young Master Hao nodded and led the group of young men and women up the stairs in a grandiose manner. Just you wait, I will never let you go. Guoming looked at the white-clothed young man's back with fear. He left a ruthless sentence to Qin Feiyang and the others, and left the Dragon Phoenix house with the enchanting woman without looking back. So awesome? Qin Feiyang, Fatso, and Yanwei looked at each other, and then looked at the white-clothed young man again. Where did this person come from? How could he be so powerful? Let me tell you, you better be quiet. Otherwise, if you anger young Master Hao and his friends, you will have to bear the consequences. The waiter turned and ran to the table of the four, took out dishes and wine jars from the tray, and placed them on the table one by one. He then warned them in a low voice and left with the tray. At last, young Master Hao led his friends to a private room on the top floor. The people in the hall also withdrew their gazes, but their voices were even quieter than before. Qin Feiyang also lowered his head, looked at Mu Qing and asked, "Do you know who young Master Hao is?" Mu Qing smiled and said, "He is such a famous person." "Of course I know." "Who?" Qin Feiyang asked. Fatso and Yanwei also looked at him expectantly. Mu Qing did not answer. He picked up a wine jar and tore the paper on it. A strong wine fragrance suddenly came to their nostrils. Good wine. Fatso and Yanwei's eyes suddenly lit up. Just by smelling the wine, they felt a little intoxicated. Try this wine first. It tastes really good. Mu Qing smiled and got up, holding the wine jar, and filled the wine glasses in front of Qin Feiyang, and the other two one by one. Fatso and Yanwei could not wait to grab the wine glass, put it on the tip of their nose, and then put it to their mouth, and gently took a sip. Suddenly, a fiery heat flowed down their throat to their lower abdomens. The two of them quivered, and their pores opened. It is really the best wine. Yanwei was full of praise as he drained the cup in one gulp. In an instant, his whole body seemed to be burning, his blood vessels were spurting, and his face was red. When the wine was gone, he felt that his whole body was very smooth. He even felt as if he was floating in the air. It felt like the impurities in his body were burned away by the wine in an instant, and he became much more relaxed. Mu Qing took a sip and asked with a smile, "How is it? I didn't let you down, did I?" No. Yanwei quickly shook his head and smiled. Fatso was also intoxicated. He turned to Qin Feiyang and said, "Boss, you should drink some too. It's really good." Qin Feiyang glared at him, and ignored the wine glass in front of him. He looked at Mu Qing and said, "My patience is limited. Why are you so boring?" Mu Qing was quite annoyed. Such good wine was in front of him, but he turned a blind eye to it. It was really boring. Don't say such useless nonsense. If I'm not wrong, you didn't really bring us here to welcome us. Tell me, what do you want to do? If you continue to be long-winded, I'll leave. Qin Feiyang frowned. Okay. I'll tell you. Mu Qing put down the wine glass helplessly and sighed. You're really hard to get along with. All right. I admit that I didn't bring you to Longfeng House to welcome you. I want you to meet someone. Mu Qing transmitted her voice. Meet someone? Who? Fatso and Yanwei were surprised. Mu Qing said, You've already met him. Met him? Fatty was slightly taken aback. He frowned and said, You can't be talking about that Guoming, right? Qin Feiyang said, It's not Guoming, it's that young Master Hao. Brother Qin is indeed smart. This young Master Hao has a great background. Whether or not you can become the chief pagoda master's disciple all depends on him. Mu Qing thought. What? Fatso and Yanwei were stunned. Qin Feiyang was also very surprised, but he did not show it and hid it in his heart. When interacting with Mu Qing, he would instinctively hide his emotions. In other words, he did not want Mu Qing to guess what he was thinking. He said calmly, Then don't keep us in suspense and tell us his background. Mu Qing transmitted her voice. Then listen carefully, he is the biological son of the Pill Pagoda's chief pagoda master. This, Fatso and Yanwei were stunned. What kind of joke was this? Wasn't this background too scary? No wonder he was so awe-inspiring. It turned out that he was the son of the chief pagoda master. Mu Qing looked at Qin Feiyang and thought, as long as you can build a good relationship with him, it would be best if you become close brothers. I can guarantee that he will definitely help you when the time comes. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes. Mu Qing's plan was indeed not bad, but he was not used to being in the same team as a playboy. I know what you're thinking. Although he is ostentatious on the surface, he is not a playboy. Mu Qing transmitted her voice. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang said. Everyone in the divine city knows that this person often says this. You can be arrogant, but you can't be a prodigal. Think about it. Can a person who can say such words be a playboy? Mu Qing laughed secretly. I can't tell. Qin Feiyang was greatly surprised. Just now, when he saw young Master Hao walking like a moon surrounded by stars, he thought that he was a dandy through and through, but he didn't expect him to have such awareness. It seemed that this person could not be underestimated. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Qing and asked, how did you know that he would come to the Longfeng house today? Mu Qing smiled and said, because he comes to the Longfeng house every day at this time, unless he is delayed by something. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked, why? Mu Qing pointed up and smiled mysteriously. That person who plays the zither. Chapter 853. I heard that the person playing the guqin is a peerless beauty. Mr. Hao comes here every day to please her. However, no one can be sure whether she is a peerless beauty or not, because no one has ever seen her face with their own eyes. Maybe Mr. Hao has seen her, but not necessarily. Mu Qing thought to himself. So mysterious? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Very mysterious. Mu Qing nodded and then said with a smile. As I said, I can only help you. As for how to get close to Mr. Hao, it depends on your ability. Of course, I also believe that with your ability, it will be easy for you to do it. After that, he added. Qin Feiyang smiled, finally picked up the wine cup in front of him, put it to his mouth and tasted it. It's really good. He nodded, then drank it in one gulp, got up and said, let's go. Take us to the trading pavilion. Mu Qing was stunned, and said with a sound transmission, shouldn't you be sucking up to Mr. Hao? Sucking up to him? In my dictionary, there has never been such a word. Because it has always been others sucking up to me. Qin Feiyang said lightly, then turned and walked toward the door. Mu Qing hurriedly said, what about the wine? You can't waste it, can you? Idiot! Don't you know to pack it up and take it away? Fatso looked at him disdainfully, held 2 wine jars and ran toward Qin Feiyang. This wine really can't be wasted. Yanwei chuckled, grabbed a wine jar, got up and left. Mu Qing was stunned and cursed secretly. How boring. There was no other way. He could only hold the last jar of wine, get up, go to the counter to pay the bill, and then chase after the 3. People came and went on the street, and it was noisy. Mu Qing drank the wine and asked, have you thought about how to get close to him? Along the way, everyone who smelled the wine couldn't help but have their eyes lit up. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Really? Mu Qing looked at him doubtfully. Young Master Hao is the son of the chief pagoda lord. He can get whatever he wants. Getting close to him isn't as easy as you say. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. He had to give this matter some thought. He does not lack anything, but there is one thing that is fatally tempting to him. Mu Qing smiled. What? Qin Feiyang asked. Door of potential. Mu Qing chuckled. Gate of potential. Qin Feiyang mumbled, his eyes flickering. The sky above the central divine nation was a cloudless blue, with no clouds in sight. Furthermore, there was no snow here, nor was there any blazing sunlight. It was like the season of warm flowers blooming, making people feel very comfortable. The mountains, rivers, and earth also presented a scene of exuberant vitality. The divine city was located in the center of the central divine kingdom. It was like a supreme king worshipped by all directions. Outside the divine city was a vast mountain range, where countless tribes of various sizes were located. Among them, the 10 super tribes of the central divine kingdom were built around the divine city. Each tribe was very large, with no less than 5 million people. They also had their own totems and dominated a region. In the southeast, thousands of miles away from the divine city, there was a majestic mountain range. This place was called the Qilin Mountain Range. In the mountain, there was an ancient tribe. Compared to the tribes in the 9 regions, this tribe could be described as a giant. It covered an area of more than 100 miles, with tall buildings towering into the sky. It was majestic and imposing. The walls on all sides of the tribe were like black pythons, emitting cold air. This was a city. In front of the main gate of the tribe, there was a plain. In the center of the plain, there was a white stone tablet hundreds of meters high. From afar, it looked like a giant sword towering into the sky. On the stone tablet, there was a fire Qilin totem. It was alive like a real Qilin that was sealed here. One could even faintly feel the power of a divine beast. Below the totem, there were 4 words in flames. Qilin tribe. Like iron hooks and silver strokes, vigorous and powerful. That's right. This was the Qilin tribe. Whoosh. Suddenly, an old man in purple descended on top of the giant tablet. Leader of the Qilin tribe, come and see me immediately. The old man in purple spoke lightly, but his voice spread in all directions. Whoosh. Before he finished speaking, a figure rushed out from the tribe. It was a middle-aged man in a white robe. His hair was half white and half black, and he exuded a vicissitude aura. That's right. He was the leader of the Qilin tribe. When he saw the old man in purple, his pupils shrank. He hurriedly flew to the old man in purple and bowed. Greetings, sir. The old man in purple said, let me tell you a piece of bad news. Your son Wuxia has been killed by Qin Feiyang. What? The Qilin tribe's leader's body stiffened. The old man in purple deeply sighed. Regarding this matter, this old man is very sorry. Please restrain your grief. Wait. The Qilin tribe's leader waved his hand. He couldn't react. Didn't you say that you want to take my son to your Wuxia? How could he die? Yes. This old man wanted to take him to my Wuxia. But when this old man was about to send a message and call someone to pick him up, Qin Feiyang and his accomplices suddenly appeared and mercilessly killed him. This matter was caused by this old man's carelessness. This old man should apologize to you. I'm sorry. After the old man in purple finished, he bowed to the leader of the Qilin tribe. The Qilin tribe's leader said, what about Qin Feiyang? Did you catch him? No. He slipped away. Now his whereabouts are unknown. This little beast is too cunning. My Wuxia is powerless. The old man in purple helplessly said. The Qilin tribe's leader clenched his hands and roared. Damn beast, I will not let him go. Don't worry, we won't let him go. When we find his whereabouts, this old man will inform you immediately. The old man in purple said. The Qilin tribe's leader said. Thank you, my Qilin tribe will also send people to investigate. The old man in purple nodded, then opened a portal and turned away. Qin Feiyang. You wait, if I don't tear you into pieces, I Wu Yunqing swear I'm not a human. The Qilin tribe's leader gritted his teeth. His eyes burst out a piercing murderous intent. At the same time, southwest of God City, thousands of miles away, there's also a towering mountain range. This mountain range is called Scorpio Mountain Range. And here, there's also a behemoth Scorpio tribe. Inside the tribe, in a hall, a middle-aged man was sitting on the throne. Beside him stood a skinny old man. Do you recognize them? The middle-aged man pointed to the void and looked at the old man. There were 4 phantoms in the void in front of him. If Qin Feiyang and the rest were here, they would definitely recognize that these 4 phantoms were their current appearances. The old man glanced at the 4 phantoms and shook his head. I don't recognize them. Why? Ming just sent me a message saying that these 4 people humiliated him in front of everyone in God City's Longfeng Pavilion. He wants me to investigate their origins as soon as possible. The middle-aged man said. Humiliated him. The old man was stunned and shook his head. I think it must be this kid who took the initiative to provoke others. The middle-aged man's expression froze. He smiled bitterly. I really can't hide anything from you. To be honest, leader, you really have to discipline him properly. Otherwise, sooner or later, he will bring disaster to our Scorpio tribe. The old man said. I know. But you also know Ming'er's character. Although he's a little arrogant, he still knows who can be provoked and who can't be provoked. The disaster that you said definitely doesn't exist. The middle-aged man smiled. The old man nodded and said, Okay, I'll go investigate now. You also have to talk to him properly. Right now, our forgotten continent is in chaos because of Qin Feiyang. All the major forces are secretly taking advantage of this opportunity to scheme. There can't be any mistakes. I understand. When I have time, I'll talk to him properly. The middle-aged man nodded. Okay, then I'll go first. After the old man finished speaking, he turned and left. Qin Feiyang. You dare to challenge the Pill Pagoda and the Mu family. What's your background? The middle-aged man muttered to himself, his eyes full of curiosity. God City. The structure of the God City was very similar to that of the spiritual state's capital. It was divided into 4 major districts and the Central District. The Central District was naturally where the Pill Pagoda was located. The 4 major districts were the North, South, East, and West. At this moment, on a street in the North District, Qin Feiyang and the other 3 stood in the crowd, looking at a towering building in front of them. This was the Trading Pavilion. And the Trading Pavilion was also very powerful in the Central Divine Kingdom. It could even be said that it was not inferior to the 10 super tribes. Every city had a branch, including the 4 major districts of the God City. And the Central Divine Kingdom was not only the God City, there were other cities. But they were all a bit far from the God City. Hey, the 4 of you, can you not stand there? How can others come in like this? Suddenly, a displeased voice sounded. In front of the Trading Pavilion, there were 2 guards in black, and the one who spoke was one of them. Are you talking about us? Fatso was slightly stunned, looked at the 2 guards, pointed at his nose and asked. Yes. I'm talking about you guys. If you don't come in, don't block our door and hinder our business. The 2 said impatiently. In an instant, the eyes of the people coming and going fell on the 4 of them. Oh. Fatty let out a strange cry and said, Are you guys blind? Can't you see that we are all standing on the street? How can we hinder you? The streets around the Trading Pavilion are under my control. Don't talk nonsense, get out of here. The 2 waved their hands in disgust. I have a bad temper. Fatso stepped in front of the door of the Trading Pavilion and said arrogantly, Since you said that we are blocking the way, then I really have to block it. Come. I opened this place, I planted this tree. If you want to pass through here, you have to pay the toll. Then, he looked at the crowd and shouted. Without a doubt, those who wanted to enter and leave the Trading Pavilion were all stopped. Is this person crazy? How dare he cause trouble in the Trading Pavilion? Just wait, there will be a good show soon. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.